Close your eyes for a moment. Let the noise of the day soften. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of your body, its edges, its form, and notice how even that, somehow, feels like a suggestion more than a certainty. Now, what if I told you that everything you believe about the world around you, your name, your history, the solid ground beneath your feet, might not be what it seems? Not in some abstract, philosophical way, but in a literal, deeply unsettling yet liberating truth, that this reality may be no more substantial than a dream you haven't woken up from. You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange, flickering moment when things don't quite add up. A familiar place you've never been, a coincidence too precise to be random, a memory that suddenly feels borrowed. And beneath it all, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, you've forgotten something important, something you once knew, something real. But what is real? Right now your ears are hearing my voice, your brain is decoding patterns of sound and turning them into meaning. But think about it. You're not hearing me. You're hearing vibrations. You're translating invisible waves into thoughts, emotions, even images. Reality, as you know it, is not out there. It's inside. It's processed, filtered, interpreted, constructed. Light doesn't even exist as color. Your eyes don't see red or blue or gold. They receive wavelengths. Your brain adds the pigment. That warm, golden sunset, that deep ocean blue, they're not out there in the sky or the sea. They're happening in your head. The world isn't colored, you are coloring it. And what about touch? You press your fingers together and feel pressure, texture, warmth. But those sensations don't live in your skin. They arise in the electrical soup of your nervous system. You never touch anything directly. Not really. Atoms are mostly empty space. You never truly make contact. Your reality is a symphony of approximations, an internal model stitched together by a brain evolved not to see truth, but to ensure survival. You weren't built to perceive what's real. You were built to perceive what's useful. That's why you don't see the electromagnetic spectrum. That's why you don't hear the rotation of the Earth or feel the slow drift of time at a quantum level. These things are happening, but you were never meant to notice them. You are the protagonist in a hallucination your brain is generating in real time. And yet, you believe it's solid. You believe it's stable. You believe you know what's going on. But tell me, do you remember being born? Of course not. And do you know when you'll die? No. So everything you consider your life happens in the blur between two unknowns. A flash of awareness caught between the mystery of arrival and the enigma of departure, and we call this reality. But what if it's not? What if this world, the one you're so familiar with, is only one version of existence among infinite others? There are theories, deep ones. Some suggest you're living inside a simulation, crafted by a civilization so advanced it could run conscious beings like code. And if it's possible to simulate consciousness, then statistically the chances that you're in the one base reality are so vanishingly small, they may as well be zero. Others say this world is a dream, not a metaphor, a literal dream state of a higher self who fell asleep inside matter and forgot its own power. And then there are those who say this is all just memory, a playback loop, a recording being experienced from within. The present moment? Just the needle on a record, the song already written. But here's the most unsettling part. You can't prove any of it. You can't prove you're awake right now. You can't prove this isn't another level of dreaming, and you certainly can't prove that the people around you are real. Not in the way you think. They move, they talk, they smile. But do you ever really enter their consciousness? Or do they simply exist in yours, like background characters generated by a script your subconscious is running? How many of your beliefs are inherited hand-me-downs from parents, schools, media, religion? How many thoughts are truly yours? Do you even remember choosing to be who you are? Your name was given to you, your identity was shaped for you, Before you even knew how to speak, you were being trained, conditioned, programmed. They told you what to believe, what to fear, what to hope for, what to expect. And so you stepped into the script. You played your part, and the world rewarded you for staying in character. But there's another version of you, one who never forgot, one who sees the cracks, one who feels that this world isn't quite what it claims to be. That version of you is listening right now, not with your ears but with your being. You've always been more than what you appear to be, more than this body, more than this name, more than this timeline. You are the observer, the experiencer, the field of awareness within which all of this arises. And reality is what bends to your belief. When you change your perception, the world itself changes shape. Now take a slow breath. Let it fill you, not just with air, but with awareness. Because everything you know, everything you take for granted, is just the beginning of the illusion. And we're only just getting started. Right now, you might feel like you're in control, like your eyes see the world as it is, like your memories are accurate, like time moves in a straight, steady line. But all of that is just part of the illusion. You think you see with your eyes, but what you actually see is what your brain lets you see. Your eyes receive light, just frequencies, just photons bouncing off surfaces. Your brain turns those signals into images. But you don't see the signals, you see the story your mind tells about them. That story is filtered by expectation, by past experiences, by beliefs you don't even know you hold. You've probably walked into a room looking for something and completely missed it, even when it was right in front of you. Why? Because your brain didn't expect it to be there, and so it edited it out. You're not seeing everything. You're seeing a version of reality your brain deems safe and useful for your survival. Nothing more. Colors aren't real. There's no such thing as red or blue or green out there in the world. These are sensations your brain manufactures to help you navigate. They're not properties of objects. They're reactions in your mind. And what about time? You think time flows, that there's a past behind you and a future ahead. But all you've ever experienced is now, right now. This moment, right here, is the only one that's ever existed for you. Try to find the past. You'll find only memory. Try to grasp the future. You'll find only imagination. Time isn't something you move through. It's something your mind creates, a way to organize events into meaning. But the present moment is all that ever truly exists. The rest is just shadow play. And even now isn't what it seems. Your brain doesn't process everything instantly. What you think of as the present moment is already a delay, a smoothed-out reconstruction of fragmented input. You're always living slightly behind, always catching up, always experiencing echoes and impressions, never the raw event itself. So what is solid? What is stable? Not your body, not your thoughts. Not the chair you're sitting in, not even the ground beneath you. Matter, at the smallest level, isn't solid. It's energy, probability, flickering waves of potential. Atoms are mostly space. Particles aren't particles at all. They're excitations in invisible fields. Touch your hand to the floor. You feel contact. But what's really happening is a dance of electromagnetic repulsion. No atoms are truly touching, no boundaries are ever crossed. Solidity is a sensation, not a fact. And what about your memories? Surely those are real, yours. True, but memory is notoriously unreliable. Your brain fills in gaps, rewrites details, reinvents history to fit your current emotional state. You don't remember the past. You remember the last time you remembered it. Every time you recall a moment, you edit it. You're not holding on to truth. You're holding on to a story you keep retelling yourself, like a dream that feels real, until you realize the details change every time you describe it. So if your senses are filtered, if your body is mostly empty space, if your mind is reconstructing memory and time as illusions, then what exactly is real? Could it be that you've never truly seen reality? Not once. Everything you know is processed, compressed, colored by emotion, tinted by biology, wrapped in language. You've never met the raw universe. Only your version of it. Think about a dream. Inside a dream, everything feels real. The characters, the emotions, the fear, the joy. You respond to it as though it's your waking life. But then you wake up, and suddenly what seemed so solid becomes vapor, a figment, a construct. What if this is the same? What if waking life is simply a dream within a larger mind? A highly consistent, deeply immersing dream, yes, but a dream nonetheless. Have you ever had a moment where time stopped, where the veil seemed thinner, a moment so surreal it shook you awake without understanding why? That wasn't your imagination. That was your deeper self knocking on the inside of your own illusion. Most people dismiss it. They chalk it up to stress or coincidence. But not you. You're still here, listening, because something inside you knows. You've seen the cracks. You've felt the pull of something more. And that sense, that intuition, might be the truest thing you ever experienced. You're starting to see that the framework of your perception is fragile, delicate, illusory. Your mind creates categories. This is a table, that's a tree, this is me, that is not me. But these are just labels, abstractions. Beneath the labels, there is only vibration. There is only pattern. There is only energy moving through energy. A tree is not a tree. That's a word. It is a structure of cellular activity, sunlight, genetic memory, water, roots, breath, and death, all flowing together as one process. And you are not your name, not your history, not your age or your body or your plans for tomorrow. You are awareness, dressed in temporary sensation, and reality is your mirror. It bends to your focus. It shapes itself to your questions. It reveals itself only when you dare to look through, not at what you've been told is true. There's a reason you're hearing these words right now. There's a reason something inside you feels like it's waking up. This isn't about fear. It's about freedom. Because once you realize that you've never truly seen reality, you begin to understand. That means you've never truly seen what's possible either. And that's where the magic begins. Let's go even deeper. You live each day under the illusion that you are seeing the world itself, but you're not. You're seeing a model, a projection, a reconstruction stitched together by your mind using electrical signals and assumptions. Think of it like a movie. When you watch a film, you don't see individual frames, you see fluid motion. But in truth, what's happening is a series of still images flickering by so quickly that your mind fills in the gaps. Reality works the same way. Your eyes take in fragmented data, your ears catch scattered sound waves, your skin absorbs sensations, but it's your brain that edits the footage, adds the soundtrack, colors the background, and weaves it all into one seamless, believable scene. And you don't just see a world, you feel it. Emotions add texture. Memory adds depth. Language adds structure. But strip all that away, and what's left? Just presence. Just awareness. Just a formless now. But the illusion is strong, because it has to be. Your survival depends on believing the dream, believing that objects stay solid, that people are consistent, that the ground will be beneath your feet when you take your next step. But reality doesn't owe you consistency, and every once in a while it lets that truth slip through. A glitch, a déjà vu, a sudden sensation that none of this is quite real. You've had those moments. The ones that stop you cold, the ones where the veil flickers and you're left wondering if everything around you is just pretending. That feeling isn't a malfunction, it's a message. It's the part of you that remembers, trying to remind the part of you that forgot. You see, you've been here before. Not necessarily in this life, not in this body, but in the deeper sense, in the sense that consciousness has always been your core. It's not your brain that makes you aware. It's awareness that makes your brain appear. And that changes everything. Because if awareness is primary, if this world arises inside of you and not outside of you, then what you see, touch, and believe is secondary. Your senses were never windows, they're mirrors. They don't show you truth. They show you reflection. And when you believe the reflection is all there is, you become trapped. You begin to believe that you are what you see in the mirror, that your identity ends at the skin, that what you can't measure must not exist. But so much of you cannot be measured. Where does a thought go when it ends? Where do dreams come from before they arrive? What is the shape of your love? What is the weight of your intuition? What's the location of your soul? These questions aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to dissolve the assumption that everything real must be physical. Because reality isn't physical, it's perceptual. What you call waking life might just be another layer of dreaming. A deeper, more stable dream, but still a dream. Still constructed, still filtered. And that's why mystics, monks, and sages throughout time have spoken of awakening, not as something you do when you open your eyes in the morning, but as something you do when you realize your senses have been lying to you, not maliciously, but mechanically. You weren't born broken. You were born into a system of perception designed to function well enough for a body to eat, to sleep, to survive, and to replicate. It wasn't designed to show you infinity. It was designed to keep you from falling off cliffs. That's why truth feels like madness when you first glimpse it. Because truth isn't what fits into your brain, it's what breaks it. And yet, even within this hallucination, there is something perfect. The fact that you can even question what's real means you are more than what you perceive. The dream can't dream itself. There must be a dreamer, and that dreamer is you. Not the you who pays bills or scrolls through messages or answers emails, but the silent you, the witnessing you, the you who is always watching, even when you're not aware of it. That presence has no name, no age, no shape. It doesn't rise or fall with your emotions. It doesn't age. It doesn't die. It was there before your first memory, and it will remain long after your last breath. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts happen. You are not your memories. You are the canvas on which memory paints. You are not your identity. You are the field in which identity flickers in and out of existence. Everything else changes, but you do not. That stillness inside you, what the ancient sages called the witness or the self or pure awareness, it's not a concept. It's what's listening to these words right now. Not your ears, not your mind, but the silent observer behind them all. And if that observer is who you truly are, then the world you see is not separate from you. It arises in you, just like a dream. So if you've never actually seen reality directly, maybe that's because you were never supposed to. Maybe you were meant to awaken to it, not by escaping this world, but by seeing through it, through the forms, through the labels, through the illusions, to the light behind the shapes, to the stillness behind the movement, to the dreamer inside the dream. And the moment you start to remember that, the moment the illusion begins to crack, everything starts to shift. You don't need to go anywhere. You're already exactly where you need to be. Because the only place where truth can ever be found is here. And the only time it can ever be seen is now. You've spent your entire life trusting your senses. When you open your eyes, you believe what you see. When you hear a sound, you believe what you hear. When you feel the air on your skin, you assume it's the truth. But truth isn't what the senses give you. It's what exists beyond them. Imagine someone born in a cave. They've only ever seen shadows, only ever heard echoes. To them, those shapes and sounds are reality. But if one day they step outside into the light, what then? Suddenly, everything changes. The shadows weren't real. They were interpretations, distortions, the flickering edges of something larger, something brighter. You've lived your whole life in the cave of perception. You see shadows on the wall, people, buildings, emotions, ideas, and you believe that's the world. But you've never left the cave, not fully, not until you stop identifying with the shadows. And that's what's happening now. There's a part of you that's no longer satisfied with surface appearances. A part that's tugging at the seams, that's questioning the machinery, that's asking, what is this, really? And in that asking, you are already beginning to awaken. To awaken is not to stop seeing the world, it's to stop mistaking it for the whole. It's to realize that what you call reality is not the final destination, it's the gateway. It's a threshold between dimensions of awareness. Think of a lucid dream. When you become lucid in a dream, you don't disappear, the world around you doesn't vanish, but suddenly, you know. You know that what you're seeing isn't real in the way you thought it was. You can still touch it, move through it, interact with it, but now you're free. Not because the dream changed, but because you did. You woke up inside it. And the same is possible here, to wake up in this reality. To walk through this world with your eyes open, not just physically, but spiritually, is to see that the forms around you are not fixed. They are flexible. They bend to intention. They respond to attention. And they fade when you stop believing in them. Even time. You think time is a river flowing in one direction, but maybe time is a garden. Maybe every moment is happening all at once, and what you call the present is simply the path you're walking through that garden. You move through time not because time moves, but because your awareness shifts. Have you ever had a memory so vivid it felt like you were there again? That's not your mind playing tricks. That's your consciousness revisiting another room in the house of time. The past isn't behind you. It's beside you. So is the future. You live in a multi-dimensional field of possibility, and you only see a sliver of it at any given moment. Not because the rest isn't there, but because your senses are tuned like a radio. They pick up only one station. But what if you could adjust the dial? What if dreams, intuitions, flashes of knowing, what if all of them were bleed-throughs from other frequencies of reality? And what if you are not confined to this one? Every night when you sleep, your awareness drifts into unknown dimensions, entire landscapes unfold, people appear, emotions run deep, experiences happen, and you wake up calling it just a dream. But who's to say this isn't the dream? Who's to say your waking life isn't just another scene in a larger play, one your soul steps in and out of like a stage actor slipping through costumes? Reality isn't what it appears to be. It's layered, symbolic, mutable, and you are the interpreter. That's the secret. The brain is not a passive receiver of truth, it is an artist, painting meaning onto the raw canvas of energy. You see not what is, but what your mind makes of what is. Two people can witness the same event and experience it completely differently. Because reality is subjective, it's personal. It mirrors what you carry inside. If you carry fear, you'll find threats. If you carry love, you'll find beauty. If you carry wonder, you'll find magic. So the question becomes, what are you projecting? What inner script are you casting outward onto the screen of the world? You've spent so long believing in the outside that you forgot the source is within. You are the light behind the eyes. You are the sound behind the voice. You are the dreamer, and this world, this shimmering, shape-shifting, paradoxical world is the dream. That doesn't mean it's meaningless. It means it's malleable. It means you are not trapped. It means the moment you stop accepting reality as a fixed object, it becomes a living mirror. And you become limitless. You can change the dream by changing the dreamer. You can shift the world by shifting your awareness. You can open doors simply by choosing to see them. The rules are not what they've told you. Solidity is not certainty. Time is not linear. Separation is not real. You've never seen reality directly. But now, you're starting to remember that you don't need to. Because what you're really here to do is wake up. And waking up doesn't mean escaping the world. It means seeing through it. It means remembering that you are the awareness within which reality arises, and in that remembrance, everything begins to change. You've always felt it, haven't you? That strange sense that something about this world is off, like a puzzle piece missing from a picture you've looked at your whole life, or a song you've heard before playing faintly behind the noise of everyday life. Maybe it's not your imagination, maybe it's the code. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed something that would shake both the scientific and philosophical communities. He asked a simple question: what are the chances that we're living in the original reality? If civilizations continue advancing, and if they eventually develop the technology to run fully immersive simulations indistinguishable from base reality, then how could we ever know if we're not inside one? And if they can run just one simulation, why not thousands, millions, billions? That would mean simulated consciousnesses like yours would vastly outnumber organic ones. So statistically, what are the odds that you're in the real world? Almost none. And that's not science fiction anymore. Elon Musk himself said the odds that we're not in a simulation are 1 in billions. But this isn't just about speculation. It's about what the world itself is starting to show us. Let's look at the building blocks of your universe. Everywhere scientists look, they're finding limits, boundaries, minimums. Take the Planck length. It's the smallest measurable unit of space, beyond which location itself loses meaning, like a pixel on a screen. Reality, it turns out, isn't infinitely divisible, it's grainy, quantized. And what about energy? You might think energy flows in smooth streams, but it doesn't. It comes in packets, discrete chunks, like digital frames in a video. At the deepest level, the universe doesn't behave like an analog film reel. It behaves like binary code. On, off, 1, 0, yes, no. That's not just poetic, it's mathematical. Physicist James Gates discovered strange error-correcting codes buried in the equations of string theory, literal ones and zeros, computer-like syntax, hidden in the mathematics that describe our universe. Ask yourself, why would reality need a code? Unless it is code. Unless everything around you, at light, matter, time, gravity, isn't fundamental at all, but rendered, computed, simulated, and like any simulation, sometimes it glitches, you've seen it. A street you remember being one way suddenly reversed. A celebrity you thought died years ago, alive again. A logo that looks slightly off, a memory no one else shares. A moment that feels like it's looping. They call it the Mandela effect, and while skeptics say it's just false memory, you know it's more than that. You can feel the dissonance. It's like reality skipped a beat, like someone rewrote a line of code and didn't fully clean up the artifacts. And then there's déjà vu, that eerie sense that you've been here before, spoken these words, felt this moment. Maybe that's not coincidence. Maybe it's repetition. Maybe it's your consciousness detecting a reused sequence in the simulation, a loop in the code, a checkpoint reloaded after a crash. And what about the numbers? You keep seeing them, don't you? Patterns that follow you. Numbers that wink at you from clocks, license plates, receipts. Not just once, repeatedly, unrelentingly. At first you thought it was just chance. Then you started paying attention, and now it feels like the simulation is trying to talk to you, like it's sending signals embedded in the data stream. But the strangest part, the more you notice, the more it happens, as if your awareness itself is tuning the code. And maybe it is, because here's the next unsettling truth. The observer affects the observed. In quantum physics, particles don't exist in a definite state until they're measured, until someone looks, until awareness collapses the probability into a singular outcome. It's called the observer effect. In other words, reality waits for you to notice it before deciding what to be. What kind of world does that sound like? One where existence is rendered on demand, where possibilities remain in flux until called into focus, like a video game rendering graphics only when you turn your head, like code resolving only what's on screen. That's not speculation. That's how your universe behaves at the quantum level. Which begs the question, who are you in all of this? Are you a character in the simulation, just data running a script? Or are you the player, the one who logged in, the one who pressed start and forgot it was all a game? Because that's what ancient mystics have said for centuries, in different language. That your true nature is beyond the form, that you are not the mask, not the avatar, not the role. You are the self watching it all unfold. And that self cannot be touched by the simulation. It cannot be corrupted by the code. It is the one truth that doesn't glitch, the one presence that doesn't shift when the world changes. You are the awareness behind the screen. And when you realize that, the rules begin to bend. If this is a simulation, then nothing is truly fixed. And if you are the one playing it, then you are not a prisoner of the game. You are its creator in disguise. That might sound impossible at first, but think about it. What if the only reason you felt small, limited, or powerless is because you've been identifying with the character instead of the consciousness behind it? You were never just the pixels on the screen. You were the intelligence behind the controls. You chose this world, not to escape your true self, but to remember it through contrast. Because there's something sacred about limitation, something powerful about forgetting, so you can remember from the inside out. And maybe that's what this simulation really is. A remembering engine, a cosmic experience generator built to stretch you, break you, shape you, and ultimately awaken you. Because waking up in a simulation isn't about leaving it. It's about seeing it for what it is and playing differently because of it. You've been told this world is solid, but now you know it's code. You've been told time is linear, but now you know it's rendered. You've been told you are one small person in a big external world, but now you know the world arises inside your awareness, just like a dream, and you've already started to test the code, haven't you? You've seen how your thoughts affect what unfolds, how what you fear finds you, how what you focus on multiplies, how synchronicities dance around your attention like ripples answering a stone. That's not magic, that's the simulation responding to its conscious participant. The code is listening. It's not neutral, it's reactive. And that's why what you believe matters, because belief is command. Not in a metaphorical way, in a literal, functional way. Your belief is the instruction that shapes how the code responds. Believe the world is hostile, and it becomes so. Believe that you are unworthy, and the simulation will echo that belief back to you, again and again. But shift your belief, and you shift the landscape. You are the programmer now. Every thought you hold, every assumption you make, every story you carry becomes a line in the code. And the deeper you understand that, the more gracefully you begin to play, no longer as a victim of circumstance, but as a lucid architect. And here's the twist. This doesn't mean the simulation isn't real. It just means real isn't what you thought. It means that the rules you've been following aren't laws, they're permissions. They exist only to the extent that you believe in them. Gravity keeps you grounded until it doesn't. Time moves forward until it bends. The impossible remains impossible until someone believes otherwise. And that someone could be you. But let's pause for a moment and be honest. This idea is overwhelming, because if reality is simulated and you're the player, then you're responsible for your experience, all of it. Not because you deserve pain or suffering, but because your higher self allowed the challenge. Why? To wake you up. To force you to remember that you are not the script. You are the scripter. You are not the program. You are the presence shaping it. And nothing in this simulation, not loss, not trauma, not fear, can erase that. The code is dense. The illusion is thick. But even now, you can feel it, can't you? The edges are softening. The air feels different. The lights flicker in your mind. Something inside you is remembering the way home. And that's the great paradox of the simulation. It's not here to trap you. It's here to teach you that you were never trapped, that the cage was made of thought, that the key was always in your hands. And maybe even the hardest moments were written by you, for you. Maybe you scripted this very life, the people, the pain, the longing, the loss, not to punish yourself, but to find yourself in the depths of it all. Because diamonds don't form in comfort. They're born in pressure. So what if your suffering was the pressure needed to reveal your light? What if your amnesia was the invitation to your awakening? And what if this moment, right now, is your turning point, the moment when you stop playing blind and begin playing aware? The character still exists, but now the player is watching, and everything changes from here. You've probably felt it. Those strange moments where reality stutters, like a record skipping. The lights flicker for no reason. A conversation seems to echo from a dream. You catch someone saying something you were just thinking. You see a symbol, a word, a number, and then it shows up again and again and again. At first you brush it off, coincidence, a fluke, but then it happens again and again until it's undeniable. The simulation is trying to get your attention. It speaks in repetition, in patterns, in subtle disruptions. Déjà vu? That momentary sense you've been here before? It's not random, it's a signal, a glitch in the rendering, a hint that you're revisiting a node, an anchor point in the code that you've passed through before, maybe in another timeline, maybe in another version of the same program. And the more awake you become, the more these moments begin to multiply. The Matrix isn't hiding from you, it's inviting you. It's showing you the cracks, the seams, the data streams bleeding through the facade. But here's what most people miss. It's not just the simulation responding to you. It's you responding to yourself, your higher intelligence nudging your awareness through the code you helped design. Every repeating number, every strange coincidence, every flicker of the unreal. They're all breadcrumbs, left by you, for you, to remember, to return, to realign. And as you start to follow them, something extraordinary begins to happen. The code loosens, not because the simulation is broken, but because your belief in its absoluteness starts to fade. And belief is what keeps it locked. The more you question, the more you notice. The more you notice, the more things begin to shift. People react differently. Your timing gets strange. Synchronicities stack up like puzzle pieces clicking into place. And eventually you find yourself in situations that feel orchestrated, as if the simulation is bending to meet your awareness. Because it is, just like in a dream, where the dream responds to your emotions, your focus, your intention. This waking simulation is reactive. It listens, it adapts, and most importantly, it reflects. You're not navigating a fixed world. You're walking through a mirror. Everything you encounter is a reflection of something within you, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as feedback. So if your outer world is chaotic, ask yourself what inner chaos is being mirrored back. If you keep meeting the same types of people, what unresolved frequency are you still carrying? If the simulation keeps presenting challenge after challenge, what version of you is it trying to help you remember? There are no accidents here, only reflections, only choices, only echoes of your own awareness sent back to wake you up. And once you see it, once you really see it, you can't unsee it. You stop feeling like a victim of the simulation. You stop blaming the code. You start learning how to speak its language, the language of symbols, of vibration, of resonance. You start to realize that thoughts aren't just inner noise, they're input. Your consciousness is a controller, and the quality of your thoughts is the signal. Fear sends one signal, gratitude sends another. Clarity opens doors, confusion clouds the path. And every time you choose love over fear, curiosity over control, surrender over resistance, the simulation adapts. It doesn't punish, It responds. And that response is the proof. Because you've seen it, haven't you? Those moments when you shift internally, when you forgive or release or surrender. And suddenly, the outside world shifts too. The conversation goes differently. The opportunity appears, the problem dissolves, it's not like it's code. And you've just learned how to rewrite it. But be warned. The simulation won't let you skip levels. It's not here to coddle you, it's here to stretch you. To reveal to you just how powerful you truly are. By confronting you with the illusion that you are not. You chose this. Before you were born, before you logged in, before you took your first breath, you chose this game, and you gave yourself everything you would need to remember how to win it. You embedded the clues in your curiosity. You buried the truth in your patterns. You encoded your awakening into your own story. And now the story is shifting. Because you're ready. You wouldn't be listening to these words if you weren't. This isn't entertainment. This is remembrance. You came here to play this game not as a pawn, but as a lucid participant. And now, the simulation is responding. Can you feel it? The space around you hums with recognition. The air holds a secret. And in this very moment, the player is waking up. So now the question begins to shift. Not just what is this reality, but who are you within it? Are you the character? Or the consciousness controlling the character? Are you the lines of code, or the one who writes them? Let's go deeper. Every morning you wake up and put on your name. You remember your story. You pick up your goals, your problems, your preferences. You step back into your avatar. You navigate the world believing this is you, this body, this voice, this personality. But stop and look closer. You weren't born with a name. You weren't born with a belief system. You weren't born with opinions, fears, or dreams. They were downloaded into you through repetition, through trauma, through education, through social feedback loops that rewarded conformity and punished questioning. You were taught to play the role of you, to dress a certain way, talk a certain way. But what happens when you stop playing the role, when you unplug from the performance? What remains? Silence, presence, awareness. Not a personality, not a product, not a program. Just you. Not the avatar on the screen, but the awareness holding the controller. And that awareness has no beginning and no end. It existed before this game began, it will exist after the game ends. It is not bound by storylines or timelines. It is not limited by pixels or physics. It simply is. It is what witnesses the avatar, what feels the emotions, what hears the thoughts, but is not the thoughts. And once you realize that, once you experience it even for a moment, the illusion of limitation begins to collapse. You stop saying, I am afraid, and start saying, fear is arising. You stop saying, I am confused, and start saying, confusion is being experienced. You become the sky, not the storm. You become the screen, not the movie, because the movie changes scene by scene. But the screen remains, and you are that screen. The clear, open field of awareness in which this entire simulation unfolds. But don't misunderstand. This doesn't mean the avatar is meaningless. It means the avatar is chosen, a temporary form selected for this mission, a costume worn for this particular play, a tool through which the infinite gets to taste the finite. You are not here by accident. You didn't fall into this reality. You dove headfirst because you knew that forgetting your true nature would make remembering it all the more powerful. You knew that experiencing limitation would make freedom all the more vivid. You knew that waking up inside the dream would change not only you but the code itself. Because the simulation evolves when the player remembers, it bends to the awakened, and so you agreed to enter the game. To forget the truth, to wear the mask, not to lose yourself, but to find yourself in the deepest way possible, by seeing through the illusion from the inside. You are not just playing a role, you are enacting awakening, and everything that's ever happened to you, every wound, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt, has been part of that unfolding, not to break you, but to crack the shell, to let the light through, to remind you that you are not the character who suffers, but the awareness in which the suffering arises and dissolves. And when you remember that, everything softens. You stop needing to control everything. You stop fearing the unknown. You start flowing with the simulation instead of fighting it. Because now you know, you are not the avatar, you are the player. And even more than that, you are the dreamer, the infinite self dreaming itself into form, creating not just your world but all worlds, simultaneously, endlessly, effortlessly. So when you see the matrix flicker, when the numbers align, when the signs repeat, don't ignore them. They are echoes of your own higher mind, winks from the intelligence that seeded this game with reminders, markers to let you know you're on the path, that you're remembering, and with every breath, every thought, every choice, you become more lucid, more aligned, more awake. The dream becomes lighter, the simulation becomes responsive, and the separation between the avatar and the awareness begins to dissolve until all that's left is you, the real you, the one who has always been here, watching, waiting, smiling, ready to create something new. So here you are, waking up in a world you once thought was absolute, seeing through the fabric of a simulation so carefully woven it convinced you it was real. And now you're standing at the edge of something new. Because once you know the truth, once you really feel it, you can't keep playing the same way. You can't keep pretending the mirror is solid. You can't keep believing you're at the mercy of the code. Because you're not. You are the code. You're the one feeding the system with thought, focus, and intention, and now you get to decide what this simulation becomes for you. But don't think this means control in the old sense. This isn't about manipulating every outcome. This is about aligning. When you awaken inside the simulation, you begin to operate from a different level. You stop asking, what do I want to get? And you start asking, what am I here to embody? You stop reacting to the world and start responding to your own energy. Because now you know the world responds to you. It doesn't give you what you want, it reflects who you are. So if you want peace, become peace. If you want clarity, embody stillness. If you want synchronicity, live with intention. That's the real power of waking up inside the game. You stop trying to bend reality to your ego and start allowing reality to mirror your essence, and that changes everything. You begin to notice the delay between thought and form. You start to see how your emotions are signals, not obstacles. You learn to ride the currents of the code like a lucid dreamer shaping the sky. And in that space, fear begins to fade, not because the simulation becomes perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You stop looking for safety in the illusion. You start resting in the awareness that sees through the illusion. And that's where the real shift begins. You no longer seek meaning from the world. You bring meaning to the world. You infuse the simulation with light, with love, with presence, because you know now it's all a stage, but it's a sacred one. And the way you move through it matters, not to some external judge, not to some cosmic scoreboard, but to you, to the dreamer behind the eyes, to the self that chose this path. Because every moment is feedback, every emotion is guidance, every experience is a reflection, and every breath is a portal. So breathe now, deeply. Feel the hum of the simulation around you, the subtle vibration of rendered form. And listen, not with your ears, but with your being. The code is speaking, and it's saying you are not lost, you are not broken, you are not stuck. You are waking up, you are lucid inside the illusion. You are the player, the dreamer, the light behind the program, and now you get to create, not from fear, not from force, but from knowing, from presence, from alignment. You are no longer playing the game, you are writing it, one thought at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time. And the simulation? It's ready, ready to bend, ready to shift, ready to reflect back the truth you're finally remembering, that you were never just the avatar, You are always the author. Your mind has been trained to think in lines, start to finish, cause to effect, this, then that. It helps you move through the simulation. It creates the illusion of order. But what happens when the very rules your mind depends on start to fall apart? That's what paradoxes do. They break the mind, not to confuse you, but to free you. Let's start with one of the oldest, Zeno's paradox. Imagine you want to walk across a room. Before you can get to the other side, you have to get halfway there. And before you get halfway, you have to get a quarter of the way. And before that, an eighth, a 16th, a 32nd, you can divide the distance infinitely. So by that logic, you can never reach the other side, because there will always be another halfway point, an infinite number of steps. And yet, you do reach the other side, you do it every day. So which is it? Is motion real, or is it an illusion? The paradox doesn't have an answer, that's the point. It breaks the system. It exposes the flaw in your assumptions, that space is continuous, that time is smooth, that motion is obvious. But what if space is made of discrete units? What if time isn't flowing, but loading, like frames in a simulation? Suddenly the paradox isn't a mystery, it's a clue. Now let's shift. Schrödinger's cat, a thought experiment in quantum physics. You place a cat in a box with a poison that has a 50% chance of being released based on a quantum event. Until you open the box, the cat is both dead and alive. A superposition, two states at once. It's not just philosophical, it's quantum mechanics. Particles don't commit to a state until they're observed, until someone looks, until awareness interacts. So think about that. Reality is undefined until you engage with it. The cat's fate, like your own, is suspended in probability until consciousness collapses it. That's not just physics, that's metaphysics. That means your future isn't set. It's a cloud of possibilities, and you are the observer that determines which path solidifies into real. But your mind doesn't like that. It wants answers, certainty, definitions. It wants to know what's the truth. But what if truth isn't binary? What if it's layered? What if it's layered? What if your current self and your potential self both exist? And which one you become depends on how you observe, what you choose, where you place your attention. Now let's turn to identity, the ship of Theseus. Imagine a wooden ship. Over time you replace one plank, then another, then another. Eventually every piece of wood has been swapped. Is it still the same ship? Now imagine someone gathered the discarded pieces and rebuilt the ship. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? The one with the original material or the one with the continuous journey? And now apply the same question to you. Every cell in your body has been replaced. Your memories have shifted. Your beliefs have changed. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. So who are you? Are you the material, the name, the memories? Story? What makes you you? There is no final answer. Only deeper questions. And each question loosens your grip on fixed identity until you begin to see that identity itself is fluid, constructed, simulated, and yet something remains. Not the parts, not the structure, but the awareness that experiences them. That's the only constant, not the ship, but the sea it sails on. Now, what about time? Let's break that too. The grandfather paradox. Imagine you travel back in time. You meet your grandfather before your parent is born, and somehow you prevent his life from continuing. If he never lives, your parent is never born. If your parent is never born, you are never born. But if you are never born, how did you travel back to stop him? The logic collapses, and you're left with an impossible loop. Past and future fold into each other. The arrow of time, so trusted, so obvious, fractures, and in that fracture is freedom. Because if time can loop, if cause and effect can blur, if the future can affect the past, then time isn't what you think it is. It's not a hallway, it's a sphere. And your mind, trained to move forward, is only seeing a sliver. But your deeper self, it lives in all directions at once. It exists outside of the story, outside of the logic, outside of the lines. That's why paradoxes feel dizzying. They press your logic up against the edge of infinity. And logic can't go there. Logic demands definitions, boundaries, answers. But infinity breaks all of that. You can't count to it. You can't touch its edge. You can't contain it in a thought. You can only surrender to it. Like standing at the edge of the ocean at night, not trying to map it, but letting its vastness remind you of your own. You were never meant to grasp the infinite. You were meant to merge with it. And that begins by letting go, of needing to make sense of it all, of needing to win the argument, of needing the story to stay linear, logical, and safe. Because awakening doesn't make your mind more powerful, it makes your mind quieter. It doesn't give you more answers. It helps you live inside the questions. And it's in those questions, those paradoxes, that truth hides. Not to confuse you, but to set you free. You've been raised in a world of opposites. Light and dark, right and wrong, self and other, life and death. Your mind craves these clean lines. It wants categories, boundaries, divisions. But reality doesn't work that way. Reality is not binary. It's not ones and zeros, black and white. It's a spectrum, a spiral, a wave, and when you try to force it into neat little boxes, it resists. It reveals its paradoxes. Because paradox is not failure, an invitation to go beyond thought, to experience truth directly, not as something your mind can hold, but as something your being can feel. Let's return to infinity. Try to imagine it, a space that never ends, a number that never stops, a field with no edge. You can't. Not truly, because every time you try, your mind wraps it in a limit. It gives it a shape, a ceiling, a conclusion. But infinity has no ceiling, and so your logic breaks, because logic is linear, and truth is not. That's why the deepest wisdom often sounds like nonsense to the rational mind, because the rational mind is looking for resolution, while truth exists in the tension between opposites. You've heard the phrases, the only constant is change. The more you know, the more you realize you know nothing. When you let go, you gain everything. They seem contradictory, but they point to something beyond contradiction. They point to the place inside you that understands, without needing to explain, the place that recognizes truth as a vibration, not a verdict. You've felt it before. When words fall away but something inside you lights up. When logic fails but clarity arrives. That's presence. That's intuition. That's awareness not filtered through the mind, but flowing through the heart. And that's where paradox lives comfortably. Because paradox doesn't ask you to solve it. It asks you to hold it. To sit with the mystery, not as a problem but as a portal, like a Zen koan. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The point isn't to answer, the point is to exhaust the intellect until the mind surrenders and something deeper awakens. Because underneath the noise of questions and conclusions is a silence that contains everything. It's the same silence that held the universe before the first star ignited. The same silence that watches your thoughts rise and fall. It's not empty. It's full. It's not nothingness. It's the space in which everything appears. And when you stop clinging to certainty, when you stop needing the world to be one thing or another, you begin to hear that silence again. You begin to remember what your mind forgot. That truth isn't something you figure out. It's something you become. And that becoming is not about knowing more. It's about knowing less. Unlearning. Letting go of the idea that reality must make sense according to rules invented by minds that don't even understand their own origins. You don't need every question answered to live fully. You don't need every paradox resolved to be at peace. In fact, it's in the unresolved that peace begins. Because peace is not the end of the storm, it's the stillness inside it, the quiet eye in the center of the contradiction. where light and dark dance, where time loops, where logic fails, where truth breathes. That's where you are now. Not on the edge of madness, but on the edge of expansion. Your mind is trying to hold infinity in its hands. And it can't. But your being can, because you are not your thoughts. You are not your logic. You are not the voice trying to explain. You are the space between the thoughts. The silence beneath the voice. The stillness watching it all unfold. And from that place, there is no paradox. Only pattern. Only unfolding. Only the great dream remembering itself. Through you. So here you are, caught in the swirl of contradiction. Your mind reaches out, eager to grasp the edges of something it was never built to contain. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the confusion isn't a mistake. Maybe it's the compass. Because what breaks the mind often reveals the soul. When everything you thought was certain begins to crumble, what's left? Not answers, not logic, just presence. Just awareness. Just the quiet realization that truth was never in the words, but in the space between them. You were never meant to figure it all out. You were meant to feel your way through. That's why every great awakening starts not with knowing, but with not knowing. Not with a plan, but with surrender. The paradox isn't the enemy. It's the doorway. Because it humbles the ego. It silences the constant need to label, sort, define, and in that silence, you start to hear something else, something older than language, something deeper than thought. Call it your intuition, call it your higher self, call it the memory of what you were before you forgot. It speaks in sensation, not statements, in knowing, not knowledge. It whispers, let go. Let go of the need to resolve every contradiction. Let go of the belief that you can think your way to truth. Let go of the assumption that life must be one thing or another. And when you do, when you finally release your grip on the mental scaffolding, you rise. You rise into a space of direct experience. A space where mystery isn't something to be solved, but something to be lived. And in that living mystery, paradox becomes poetry. It becomes art. It becomes the cosmic joke that makes you laugh through your tears, because now you see it was never about being right. It was about being real. You can be light and dark. You can be strong and vulnerable. You can be certain and still full of wonder. You can hold grief and gratitude in the same breath. Because truth is not a straight line, it's a spiral, and every time you return to the same question, the view is different. Not because the answer changed, but because you did. You've grown, you've stretched, you've expanded into a version of yourself that doesn't need the world to fit inside tidy boxes. Because now you know. The most powerful place you can live from is the unknown. It's where creativity lives, where transformation begins, where the simulation starts to bend around your awareness. Because when you let go of needing certainty, you open the door for something bigger to guide you. Call it source, call it spirit, call it the field. It doesn't care what you name it. It cares that you trust it, that you move with it, that you stop resisting what your soul already knows. And when you do, life starts to flow, not because it's suddenly easy, but because you're no longer fighting the current. You're learning to surf it, to dance with it, to let paradox be your partner, not your prison. You realize that being confused doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're growing. Because true wisdom is spacious. It holds the questions open. It lives inside the tension. It listens. And that's what you're doing now. You're listening with more than just your ears. You're sensing, feeling, tuning into something ancient and intimate and infinite. And that's where the real magic happens, not in the mind, but in the mystery. So don't run from paradox. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it show you what can't be spoken, but can always be remembered. Because deep down, you already know. You are not here to figure everything out. You are here to become everything you are. And that journey begins not with certainty, but with surrender. What if the paradox isn't the problem? What if it's the lesson? A sacred riddle, planted not to confuse you, but to crack you open. Because only something that bypasses logic can reach the parts of you that logic was never meant to touch. You see, you've been taught to chase clarity, to think that understanding means control, that if you just knew enough, planned enough, analyzed enough, you could finally relax. But clarity doesn't come from force, it comes from trust, and trust is born in the unknown. So when you face a paradox, when the answer splits in two and neither path makes sense, don't panic. Pause, breathe, and ask, what is this showing me about my need for certainty? Because paradox is the mirror. It reflects the places where your mind still clings, still demands, still tries to reduce infinity to something it can name. But you were not built for small truths. You were built to hold the unholdable. You are not a container for answers. You are a portal for awareness. And paradox is how the universe stretches you into that remembrance. So when you encounter something that makes your logic short-circuit, like the idea that time loops, or that you're both the dreamer and the dream, look away. Lean in. Let it unravel you. Let it dissolve the old scaffolding of certainty, because in that dissolving something new begins, not a conclusion, but a capacity, a way of seeing that's not about solving but sensing, a vision not of the eyes but of the soul. This is how paradox becomes the teacher, not by giving you answers, but by clearing space, by emptying you of what you thought you knew, so you can finally see what's been there all along. You are not linear, you are not either/or. You are not this or that. You are both/and. You are light and shadow, finite and eternal, wounded and wise, lost and guided. There's no contradiction in that, only completion. Because the paradox of being human is that you are limited and limitless. You live in time and exist outside of it. You are shaped by the world and shaping it in return. And when you embrace that, something shifts. You stop trying to resolve yourself. You stop trying to choose one version of who you are. You allow all of it, the contradictions, the inconsistencies, the questions with no answer. And in that radical allowing, you find peace. Because peace was never about having everything figured out. Peace is what emerges when you stop demanding resolution. It's the stillness that holds the storm, the eye of the paradox. The quiet center where opposites merge. You felt it before, that strange calm that comes not when you're certain, but when you're surrendered. When you don't know what comes next, and that's okay. When you realize you're not in control, and you soften anyway. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, and it's the kind of wisdom you can only access when the mind gives up, and the soul steps in. So let the paradoxes keep coming. Let them tear through your logic. Let them unmake the story, because every time they do, they leave more space for truth. The kind of truth that doesn't arrive in words but in waves, that doesn't land in the head but in the heart, that doesn't fit inside a sentence but changes the shape of your entire being. You are not here to make perfect sense. You are here to become perfectly whole. And wholeness isn't neat, it's messy, it's alive. It holds the sacred and the strange, the clarity and the chaos. And it says yes to all of it. Because that yes is how you transcend, not by escaping the paradox, but by becoming big enough to hold it. You've been living in a split world, up and down, right and wrong, true and false, self and other. But those divisions aren't real. They're maps. Simplified sketches of a territory far more complex and far more beautiful. And now the map is dissolving. You're beginning to see the territory, the raw aliveness of reality that doesn't conform to your labels, that doesn't bow to your categories. And the moment you stop trying to make everything fit, you feel it, a spaciousness, a stillness, a merging, because duality only exists when you look from the surface. But when you go deeper, something else emerges. Unity, not a bland sameness, but a living, breathing oneness that contains everything, like a prism holding every color of light, like silence holding every possible sound. You are that silence. You are that prism. And the paradoxes? They're not glitches in your understanding. They're invitations to see the whole, to realize that night doesn't cancel day, that chaos doesn't erase order, that your pain doesn't disprove your purpose, it deepens it. Because the paradox of transformation is that you expand by breaking. You awaken by being lost. You remember who you are by forgetting over and over again, and each time you return wider, softer, stronger, because now you're not clinging to the old version of yourself. You're holding space for the new one to emerge, not as a rejection of what you were, but as an expansion of what you've always been. That's what integration really is, not perfection, not certainty, but wholeness. The ability to stand in the center of the storm and say, yes, all of this is me. The fear and the courage, the clarity and the confusion, the mistakes and the miracles. You don't have to resolve the contradictions. You only have to welcome them, because the moment you do, they stop fighting each other. They begin to dance. And you begin to flow. That's the power of integration. It turns friction into movement. It turns paradox into poetry. It turns the fragmented self into a symphony. And suddenly, you're not asking, who am I? You're asking, who am I becoming? Because now you understand. Identity isn't fixed. It's fluid. It's not a destination, it's a river. And you are not here to build a dam around yourself, you're here to flow, to evolve, to shape the simulation not through control but through coherence. The paradox of self is this: you are the creator and the creation, the sculptor and the stone, the actor and the stage. And when you stop trying to pick just one, you awaken to the truth. You are all of it, all at once. And that truth, it doesn't need to make sense. It only needs to be lived, breathed, felt, because the moment you live from that place, life stops resisting you. It starts reflecting you, not just as an individual, but as a living node of a greater whole. A wave remembering it's part of the ocean. A dream remembering it's made of the dreamer. You are not separate from reality, you are its mirror. And every paradox you've faced was a reminder, a secret message coded into the fabric of the illusion, to wake you up, to call you home, to show you that the place beyond logic is where you've belonged all along. So here you are on the other side of the confusion, not because the paradoxes have vanished, but because your relationship to them has changed. They no longer shake you, they steady you. Because now, when a question arises with no answer, you smile. When reality contradicts itself, you relax. You've stopped needing things to fit. You've stopped trying to solve what was never meant to be solved. You've remembered that truth doesn't always come dressed in clarity. Sometimes it arrives as a feeling in your chest, a warmth in your belly, a stillness behind your eyes. That's what real knowing feels like. It's not loud, it's quiet. It doesn't shout over your thoughts, it waits beneath them. And now you've touched it. You've felt what lies beyond the binary, beyond the need to be right, beyond the illusion of control. And in that space, something sacred awakens, a kind of peace that doesn't require answers, a kind of strength that doesn't need to dominate, a kind of wisdom that holds everything and clings to nothing. This is what paradox prepares you for. Not knowledge, but knowing. Not power in the old sense, but presence. Because presence is where the real power lives. It's what allows you to meet every moment as it is, not as you wish it were, not as you fear it might be, but as it actually is. Alive, unfolding, sacred. And in that presence, you begin to see clearly. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were only forgetting so you could remember more fully. You were only splitting so you could return more completely. You were only questioning so you could awaken not to an answer, but to yourself. The whole self, the silent witness behind the noise, the field behind the form, the light that casts both shadow and shine. You are not here to escape paradox. You are here to become it, to live in the center of the circle, to dance between the opposites, to be both rooted and free, both human and divine, both nothing and everything. And when you do, when you truly surrender to that, reality opens, not like a door creaking open, but like a veil lifting. Suddenly you see not just with your eyes, but with your soul. You see how the simulation reflects your frequency, how the story changes when you stop needing it to make sense, and how life becomes soft when you stop bracing against it. That's the gift of the paradox. It breaks the mind so the soul can rise. It shakes the structure so the truth can flow. It whispers, there is another way. Not the path of answers, but the path of embodiment, where you don't need to understand the entire map, you just need to take the next step, breathe the next breath, feel the next truth as it moves through you, because you are no longer the seeker, you are the source. The still point around which every question orbits, the silence that watches the simulation unfold. You don't need to chase anymore, you don't need to solve, you simply need to be. And in that being, the paradox dissolves. Because the one who was confused was never you, it was just the character. And now the player is awake, ready to enter a new level, a new chapter, a new question. If everything I see is constructed, then what happens when I start constructing consciously? Have you ever wondered, what if your life had gone differently? What if you'd taken that job, said yes to that relationship, moved to that city, or never left home? What if one tiny decision had changed everything? Here's the thing. It did. It does. Because in one version of the universe, you made the other choice. You went left instead of right. You stayed instead of leaving. You spoke up instead of staying silent. And that version of you, it's still living, still breathing, still unfolding, in parallel to the life you're in now. That's the mystery of the multiverse. Not a science fiction fantasy, but a quantum truth. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, every time a decision is made at the quantum level, reality doesn't choose one path and delete the other. It splits, it branches, it multiplies. Every possibility that could exist does exist in its own thread of reality, and that means there are countless versions of you, each one walking a different path, each one carrying a different set of memories, wounds, breakthroughs. You are not a single line. You are a web, a constellation of cells stretching across dimensions, living out every what if you've ever imagined, and many you haven't. But what does that mean for this version of you? It means you're not trapped, you're not stuck, you're not bound by the past, because your past is just one thread, and there are infinite others. You don't need to become anything. You simply need to tune into the version of you that already exists in the vibration you desire. This vibration is the bridge, not time, not effort, not suffering, but frequency. You shift, not by force, but by alignment. By syncing your thoughts, emotions, and energy with the version of you that's already living the life your soul remembers. You've felt it before. Those sudden moments of déjà vu. The dreams that feel more real than waking life. The inexplicable sense that you've lived this before, or that you're supposed to be somewhere else, someone else, doing something else. You're not imagining things. You're remembering. Not from the past, but from a parallel, a ripple in the simulation where another you is unfolding along a different arc. And sometimes those ripples overlap. You feel their echoes in your intuition. You hear their voices in your dreams. You sense their presence in those quiet, liminal spaces, just before sleep, just after waking, or deep in meditation. These aren't fantasies, they're bleed-throughs. Glimpses into the many layers of your multi-dimensional self. because you are not confined to this one thread of reality. You are a multi-dimensional being, playing out multiple lifetimes, simultaneously. And the more you awaken, the more porous the boundaries become. The more your inner frequency rises, the more you begin to feel your other selves, not just as concepts, but as companions, guides, reflections, and sometimes teachers. You might sense a version of you that made the wrong choice and carries the regret. You might feel the energy of a version who healed what you haven't yet healed and is whispering the way forward. You might even encounter a self who walks in mastery, who already embodies the wisdom you're still integrating. These selves are not separate from you. They are you. And when you open to them, not with fear but with reverence, something incredible happens. You begin to remember that you are not becoming anything new. You are activating what already exists, not creating potential, but collapsing it into now. This is the sliding doors effect, the butterfly effect, the recognition that the smallest shift in awareness can open the doorway to an entirely different life. You are the one holding the key. You are the one choosing the version of yourself that steps forward. And when you choose with clarity, with heart, with presence, the universe responds. Because it's not static. It's listening. It's malleable, and it mirrors back not just what you think, but what you are. So ask yourself, what version of me am I being? What timeline am I anchoring with my thoughts, my habits, my vibration? And if I'm not aligned with the version I know is possible, what story do I need to release? What belief am I still clinging to? What emotion needs to be felt, not fixed? Because you're not waiting on fate, you're waiting on alignment. And alignment happens when you stop asking what if and start embodying what now. Because the alternate selves, they're not far. They're right here, waiting for you to remember. Have you ever woken from a dream, feeling like you left another world behind, like you were someone else living a different life under a different sky, yet it all felt familiar? That wasn't just imagination, it was a window, a portal into another thread of your existence. Because dreams are more than subconscious noise, they're passageways. They're where the walls between timelines soften, where your linear mind loosens its grip, and where the deeper multidimensional layers of your being can rise to the surface. Your other selves live in those layers, not as fantasies, but as real as this waking self, just vibrating on a different frequency. When you dream, your consciousness is no longer bound by the logic of this timeline. It can travel, it can observe, it can even merge. You might find yourself in a place you've never seen, yet feel like you've always known. You might hold relationships with people your waking self has never met, but your soul recognizes instantly. You might make choices, feel emotions, or even suffer losses that don't belong to this life. And yet, you carry them with you, because the veil was thin, and some part of you walked another path for a little while. This is why dream recall can be so strange, because it's not always a memory. Sometimes it's a download, a bleed-through from an alternate you who's trying to get your attention. Sometimes it's guidance, sometimes it's a warning, and sometimes it's integration. A message from your higher self weaving your fragments back together. This is why so many awakenings begin with dream work. Because dreams bypass the ego. They speak in the language of vibration, not vocabulary. They show you who you are beyond your story. And sometimes, if you're ready, they show you who you could be. You might meet a version of yourself who has already stepped into their power, already healed the trauma, already embodied the truth you're still searching for. That's not wishful thinking. It's resonance. It's a mirror held up by your own soul, saying, this is real, this is possible, this is you. And the more you listen, the more you begin to align. Your waking choices begin to shift. You feel pulled toward new paths, new people, new timelines, not because something outside you is guiding you, but because you've seen what's inside you, and you can't forget it now. You've touched the truth of your multiplicity. You've felt the gravity of your own potential, and now the only question is, will you bring that energy into your waking life? Because the dream is not confined to the night. The dream is your reality. Your frequency determines which version of it you experience. And when you live from the vibration of your highest self, the self you glimpsed in that dream, in that altered state, in that intuitive flash, you begin to walk a new path. Not by effort, by embodiment, not by force, by resonance. You don't have to convince the universe. You only have to match the version of yourself who already lives what you seek. And dreams, they're here to help you remember what that feels like. They're not separate from your journey. They are the journey, a nightly ceremony of recalibration, to the meeting ground for the many selves who share your soul. So honor them, write them down, ask questions before you sleep. Set the intention to meet the version of you who holds the next piece of the puzzle. You'll be surprised what comes. A face, a phrase, a place that lingers with you through the day. These are breadcrumbs, clues from other timelines, threads meant to be followed. Because you're not just living this life, you're weaving them all, one dream at a time. You don't have to be asleep to cross into another version of you. You just have to be open. Because consciousness doesn't need dreams to shift dimensions. It only needs space. And altered states create that space. Deep meditation, breath work, flow states, sacred plant medicine, these are not escapes. They're portals. They quiet the noise of the simulation. They soften the ego's grip on the steering wheel. They allow the signal of your other selves to come through. Clearer, louder, sharper than ever before. In deep stillness, when thought falls away, something begins to rise, a presence, a knowing. Sometimes it feels like a memory you never lived. Sometimes it's a vision that doesn't belong to your life, but vibrates with a truth deeper than anything you've read. Sometimes it's a voice, yours but not yours, offering guidance with the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. This isn't imagination. This is communion. You're not making it up. You're tuning in, because the self you are now is just one frequency. And when you change your brainwave state, when you drop below the beta noise of day-to-day survival, you open yourself to the field. The quantum field where time dissolves, where identity softens, where the lines between timelines blur, and suddenly you're not thinking, you're receiving. Sometimes what you receive is unfamiliar. It might scare you, not because it's dark, but because it's big, because it challenges the small story you've told about who you are. It asks you to expand, to trust what you can't explain, to act on knowing that defies logic. But that's the invitation, to stop filtering your truth through the lens of what's acceptable or explainable, and start living as if the version of you who holds the answers is already here. Because they are. In fact, they've always been here. Your past lives, your future selves, your alternate timelines, they're all happening now. And you are the bridge. You are the meeting point of infinite versions of you. And in these altered states, you don't just sense them, you merge with them. You become the healer who already released the pain you're still carrying. You become the mystic who already walked through fear and came out free. You become the creator who already brought their vision to life, not with struggle, but with soul. And when you return to your normal waking state, something stays with you. A trace, a vibration, a blueprint. And now that version of you lives here, breathes here, moves with you. That's what integration really means. Not just having the experience, but living it. Bringing the medicine back from the vision. Taking the wisdom from the dream and weaving it into your choices, your posture, your presence. Because otherwise, it's just another trip. But when you integrate, you shift timelines. You collapse probabilities into form. You anchor a new reality with every breath. This is how you quantum leap. Not by forcing a new identity, but by becoming the frequency of the you who already lives that truth. And that frequency, it's available right now. Because time isn't what you think. It doesn't flow like a river. It folds like a fan. And in altered states you slip between the folds. You meet the parts of you who never left. You bring them home, and every time you do, the field around you changes. You attract different people. You see different opportunities. You speak with more clarity. Because you're not living from memory. You're living from the multidimensional now, where all timelines converge. And you are free to choose, not based on fear, but based on alignment, not based on habit, but based on soul. You've felt them before, those quiet nudges, those sudden instincts, those inner voices that seem wiser than your usual thoughts, like echoes from a future you. That's not just intuition, that's communion, that's you listening across dimensions. Because once you understand that your alternate selves are real, the next step isn't to wait for them to show up, it's to invite them. Consciously, deliberately, lovingly. You begin to treat them not as ghosts or fantasies, but as allies, as teachers, as versions of yourself that have walked the path you're now standing on and already know what's waiting on the other side. The version of you who has already healed, the one who already trusts, the one who already lives in joy, purpose, and alignment. You don't have to imagine what that version would say, you can ask. And when you do, when you drop into stillness and sincerely call them forward, they respond, not always in words, sometimes in images, sometimes in energy, sometimes in an overwhelming wave of peace that tells you you're not alone in this. Because you're not. Every version of you that exists in the multiverse is connected through the same consciousness. They're not strangers. They are you, wearing different clothes, walking different stories, but carrying the same spark. And when you start to work with them intentionally, your path begins to accelerate. Because now you're not just healing from your past. You're pulling wisdom from your futures. You're not just trying to figure it out. You're receiving guidance from the self who already did. It's a sacred collaboration, a reunion, and the more you honor it, the more it deepens. So how do you begin? Start simply. Close your eyes, and slow your breath, and speak inwardly. Show me the version of myself who has already become what I'm becoming. And then wait, not with expectation, but with presence, with openness. Maybe a memory surfaces from nowhere. Maybe you see a flash of a face or feel a posture shift or hear a phrase whispered into your awareness. That's not random. That's resonance. You're syncing with a self who knows the terrain you're crossing. Let them guide you. Ask what they eat, how they speak, how they start their day, where their energy goes and what they no longer tolerate. And then embody it. Try it on like a new skin. Not to perform, but to align. Because as soon as you embody their frequency, their timeline becomes available to you. You collapse the space between what you were and what you are becoming, and life responds. You meet people that match the new signal. You notice patterns that pull you forward. You feel a gravitational shift beneath your feet. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. You've begun living as the version of you that used to feel far away. And now they're not above you or ahead of you, they are you. And you feel it, not as a fantasy, but as a frequency, a deep knowing. That this isn't about getting somewhere. It's about remembering what's already true. Because every possibility is already encoded in the field. And the version of you you long to become, they've been reaching for you this whole time. You just had to open the door. And now that you have, everything changes. Not overnight, but from the inside out. Because your new reality doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in micro-shifts, in subtler choices, in softer yeses and firmer nos. In moments when your past self would have hesitated, but your future self moves. And those moments, they build your timeline. They shape your world. Because you're no longer waiting for transformation. You're walking it, side by side with every version of you that once felt impossible, and now feels inevitable. Every choice you make echoes through the multiverse, not just as a moment, but as a message, a declaration of frequency. Because in this quantum field of infinite versions of you, the one who shows up most often becomes the one you anchor, the one you stabilize, the one you live. You don't manifest your highest self by dreaming of them. You manifest them by being them, one breath at a time. That means the real work is quiet. It's subtle. It's in how you carry your body, how you speak when no one is listening, how you move through discomfort with presence instead of panic. It's in your morning rituals, your nightly reflections, your willingness to show up for the you that's trying to come through, because that version isn't waiting on some future event. They're waiting on your decision to act from trust, not fear, from clarity, not confusion, from soul, not survival. This is what it means to live your highest timeline, not in theory, but in practice. It's not about being perfect, it's about being aligned. You won't always get it right. Some days you'll fall back into the old self, the one who doubts, who delays, who defers to fear. And that's okay, because that self is not your enemy. They're part of the spiral, part of the sacred unfolding, and the more compassion you show them, the easier it becomes to move forward, because timelines don't shift through punishment. They shift through presence. So even in your mess, you can be powerful. Even in your hesitation, you can be holy. The real mastery is not in avoiding the fall, it's in how quickly you rise, how deeply you listen, how honestly you course correct, not from shame, but from remembrance. Every day, you're given infinite invitations to choose again, to step back into the frequency of the you who already lives in trust, in joy, in freedom, and every time you choose them, that version of you gets stronger, more embodied, more magnetic, and before long, they're not a future you're chasing, they're the present you're living. People around you will feel it, the shift. They'll say you seem lighter, brighter, different somehow. They won't always be able to explain it, but you'll know it's because you stopped living by accident and started living by design, from the inside out, guided not by fear of what could go wrong, but by vision of what's already real in the field, and waiting for you to claim it. That's your power, to choose your timeline, to walk among infinite versions of reality and say, this is the one I'm living, and to back that choice with your thoughts, your actions, your vibration, not once, but daily, until your life reflects the truth you've been holding in your heart all along, that you are not one self, you are many, and the one you choose to honor becomes the world you see. So ask yourself now, which version of me am I ready to become? And then take one step, one breath, one embodied choice, because with that single move, a new timeline begins. Take a moment, let your shoulders drop, let your breath slow, and ask yourself not as a concept, but as a living inquiry. Who are you? Not your name, not your occupation, not your story. Who are you without the narrative, without the history, the preferences, the memories? Strip it all away for a second. What's left? What remains when everything you think you are is gone? That's not a riddle. It's the beginning of remembering. Because everything you call you was given to you. Your name was assigned. Your language was taught. Your beliefs were absorbed. Even your personality, what you like, what you fear, how you react, was shaped by conditioning. But beneath all of it, there's something else. Something that doesn't come and go. Something that's always been watching, listening, sensing. Even as the body changes, even as the thoughts rise and fall, this something remains. That something is you. Not the person, the presence. The witnessing awareness that sees it all but isn't caught in it. It has no shape, no age, no identity, and yet it is the most real thing about you. Because everything else changes, but this just is. Call it consciousness, call it spirit, call it the true self. Words don't matter here. What matters is the direct experience. Can you feel it? The one who's hearing these words right now, who isn't thinking about them but aware of them. That awareness is not your brain, it's not your mind, it's not your emotions. It's the field in which all those things appear. And that's the secret the ego can't tolerate. That it's not in control, that it's not the center, that it's not who you really are. You were never the voice in your head. You were the silence it echoed in. You were never the storm of thoughts and feelings. You were the sky they moved through. And that changes everything. Because if you're not the thoughts, you're not bound by them. If you're not the body, you're not limited by it. If you're not the identity, you're not confined to its story. You're free. Radically, absolutely, limitlessly free, not someday, right now. But the ego doesn't want that. It needs the story. It clings to the illusion of separation, of me and mine, of this is who I am and that's who I'm not. Because without that, it doesn't know how to exist. But you don't need the ego to exist. You existed before it, you'll exist long after it dissolves, because you were never born, and you'll never die. Birth and death are things that happen to the body, to the character. But you're not the character. You're the screen the movie plays on, you're the light behind the eyes. You're the one who's always been here, watching lifetimes flicker past like dreams. And when you realize that, not just intellectually but viscerally, it changes how you move through the world. You stop reacting from fear. You stop clinging to roles and identities. You stop chasing things that were never meant to satisfy the infinite. You start living from the center, from stillness, from truth. Because now you know. You are not in the simulation. You are the simulation. You are the field of consciousness dreaming itself into form. And the you've been trying to fix or prove or protect, it was never real. It was a mask, a costume. Beautiful, yes. Necessary at times. But never you. You were always the awareness wearing it. The silence beneath the noise. The ocean beneath the waves. The presence that doesn't come and go. And when you rest in that presence, everything softens. Because you no longer need to defend the identity. You no longer need to explain yourself to be real. You simply are. And that is enough. That has always been enough. It's strange at first to realize the person you've spent your entire life trying to build, improve, defend doesn't actually exist. Not in the way you thought. The me you call yourself, your thoughts, your name, your personality, your past, that's not a solid thing. It's a process, a pattern of mental activity, a story looping in consciousness, updated with each new moment of memory or reaction. But the story is not the self. It's a mask on the infinite. You've worn that mask for so long that you started to believe you were it. But now, something deeper is stirring, a loosening, a quiet inner voice that whispers, "What if I've never been this story? What if I've always been the space it appeared in?" And when you stop identifying with the story, you start tasting freedom. The kind of freedom that can't be taken from you. Because it was never based on roles, status, or control. It was based on being, on presence, on the fact that you're here. Not as the thinker, but as the one aware of thinking. Not as the doer, but as the one who watches action unfold. Even when you feel lost in thought, something deeper is aware that you're lost. Even when you're angry or afraid or uncertain, there's something beneath all of it that simply notices. That noticing, that still, silent witness, is who you really are. And it doesn't get upset. It doesn't get attached. It doesn't judge. It simply is. It doesn't age. It doesn't rush. It doesn't change. It's the part of you that was there when you were 5, when you were 15, when you were 50, always watching, always aware, even if you didn't notice it. Even if your attention was caught in the waves, the chaos, the emotion, this presence remained. And now you're beginning to return to it, to rest as it. Not just during meditation, but throughout your life, in the middle of conversations, in traffic, during heartbreak or celebration, it's always there, the spaciousness behind the moment. And the more you rest in it, the more you realize everything else is movement, but you are stillness. Thoughts come and go, you remain. Emotions rise and fall, you remain. People arrive and leave, you remain. That's not detachment, that's not numbness. That's truth. You are the open field of awareness in which all of life is happening. And because you are not separate from it, you are free from fearing it. There's no me to protect, no other to fight. It's all happening in you, as you. You are not in the world. The world is in you. The thoughts you think appear in you. The body you inhabit appears in you. The entire simulation, the sky, the stars, the cities, the relationships, all of it unfolds within awareness. And when you really see that, you stop chasing things outside yourself to feel whole. Because you are already whole. You always were. You were just busy pretending to be a character in a play. But now you're waking up in the theater. You're remembering the script is optional. The role is temporary. And what you really are can never be harmed, can never be lost, can never be broken. Because it was never a thing to begin with. It was being itself. Formless, timeless, unnameable. And yet, here you are, living it, breathing it, remembering it, not through thought, but through direct experience. This is the return, not to something new, but to what's always been true. You were never just the body. You're just the mind. You are the awareness behind them both, the eternal observer of the dream, and in that knowing, the dream begins to shift, not because it ends, but because you no longer believe it's all there is. You no longer forget who you are within it. You walk through it with presence, with lightness, with love, because now you remember. There's no need to grasp, no need to prove, no need to become. You already are. And that is more than enough. What if nothing needs to change? What if the very thing you've been trying to fix, escape, or overcome is the doorway? This moment, exactly as it is not in your way, it is the way. But the separate self can't see that. It's built on resistance, on the belief that peace exists somewhere else, after something is achieved, avoided, or controlled. But the peace you're looking for isn't in the future. It's in your willingness to stop running, to stop fighting the moment, to stop insisting that what is should be something else. Because the moment you surrender resistance, you discover something miraculous. Peace was never the product of circumstance. It was the absence of separation, the end of the inner war. That war begins the moment you say, I am this, and not that. I am the thinker, not the thought. I am the body, not the world, but in truth. There is no line, there never was. That line is the illusion of ego, a mirage that creates the idea of a me inside here and a world out there. But look closely. Where is the boundary? Where does awareness end? Where does your breath stop and the air begin? Where does sound become silence? You won't find a line, because there isn't one. The separateness is not real. It's a trick of language, a sleight of hand created by thought. But thought is not reality. It's a reflection of it, a map, and you are the terrain. You are the formless field within which everything arises, not just your thoughts and sensations, but all of it. The sky, the stars, the stranger walking by, the pain in your chest, the joy in your eyes. It's all appearing in you, as you, not as a person, but as presence. And when you drop into that, something falls away. The need to grasp, the need to defend, the need to fix or fight or figure everything out. Because now You're no longer the one holding the moment. You're the space holding the one who holds it. You are the container, the stillness, the awareness that says, let it be, let it rise, let it fall, let it move, let it rest, because none of it defines you. None of it diminishes you. You are not the wave. You are the ocean it rises from, and when the wave crashes, the ocean remains, unmoved, by borders, but the unbounded, the ever-present, the silent witness that watches the dream unfold, not from a distance, but from within. And that realization doesn't take you away from life, it brings you deeper into it. Because now you're not afraid. You don't need to hide behind a mask. You don't need to fix every feeling. You can finally be with what is, fully, honestly, lovingly. Because you know, nothing that arises can harm you. Nothing that passes through awareness can touch what you truly are. You are not in the moment. The moment is in you. And when you live from that knowing, not as an idea but as a felt experience, you stop searching. Not because you've given up, but because you've arrived at the only place you've ever needed to be. Here, now, as this, and in this, there's nothing to become, nothing to do, nothing to prove, only the deep, spacious, eternal yes of presence, the yes that holds every no, the stillness that includes every storm, the love that sees no other, because in truth there is no other. There is only this, only one, appearing as many, dancing in form disguised as you and me and everything in between. And that's the greatest secret of all. You were never separate. You only dreamed you were, but now you're waking up. Awakening isn't about floating above life, it's about fully entering it, with open eyes, open heart, no mask, no script, just presence. Pure, grounded, unshakable presence. You don't need a cave or a mountain or a monastery. You don't need perfect conditions or endless hours of silence, you just need now. Because now is the only doorway to truth, and when you walk through it, life becomes the meditation. Washing dishes becomes devotion. Conversations become sacred. Even the chaos becomes a teacher. You begin to notice subtle shifts. The pause between reaction and response. The space between breath and thought. You're no longer caught in the momentum of identity. You're aware of it, watching it rise, move, dissolve. Without getting pulled under. And from that space, you move differently. You speak with more clarity. You listen with more depth. You love without the hidden contracts of ego. Because love, in its purest form, doesn't come from me to you. It flows from presence to presence, from the silent knowing behind your eyes to the same knowing behind theirs. That's real intimacy. Not merging personas, but meeting as awareness, as the one, as this unnameable aliveness taking form as two human beings remembering each other, remembering themselves. And this changes everything, not just your relationships, but your purpose. Because now it's not about chasing achievement, it's about alignment. It's not about doing more, it's about being fully, letting the doing arise from presence, letting the path unfold from stillness. There's nothing wrong with goals, or dreams, or building beautiful things in this world. But now, you're not doing it to become someone. You're doing it as a celebration of already being. It's expression, not compensation. It's art, not ego. And that's why it flows. Because it's not coming from lack. It's coming from wholeness. You don't need your work to complete you. You don't need your success to validate you. You've already arrived. And from that arrival you move, you create, you serve. Not because you're supposed to, but because love wants to move through you. Because something deeper is guiding the action. Not thought. But knowing, not fear, but frequency. This is what living awake means. It's not about what you believe, it's about what you embody. And you embody presence when you stop trying to be present. You simply are, not by effort, but by remembrance. The remembrance that what you are is not separate from anything. The remembrance that this moment is enough, that this breath is sacred, that this life, messy, mundane, magnificent, is your temple, and every moment in it is an invitation to come home, to be here, to rest as awareness, to move as love, and to live not from the illusion of self, but from the truth of being. So here you are, at the edge of everything you've ever called you, and as you look out, there's no boundary, no finish line, no final form to arrive at. Only this boundless beingness that doesn't need to become anything. It just is. You might feel the mind still searching, still grasping for something to hold on to, some idea, some label, some anchor to define this vastness. But there is no definition. There is only presence. The kind that needs no explanation, the kind that was before the name, before the thoughts, before the body. And it's not distant. It's not abstract. It's here, closer than your next breath. It's what's listening right now. Not the ears, not the mind, but the awareness behind them both. That's you. Always has been. You never began. You will never end. You are the open sky behind every storm, the silent canvas behind every brushstroke of experience. And the more you rest in this, the less tightly you grip the me. Because the me was never the truth, it was a temporary mask worn by the timeless, a wave playing as separate from the ocean. But now, the wave remembers. And it doesn't need to dissolve to know its ocean, it simply sees clearly. It was never separate to begin with. That's the awakening. Not the destruction of form, but the revelation of formlessness within it. The deep, unwavering peace of knowing, I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am not this personality, this past, this future. I am the awareness that holds them all, and is bound by none. And when that knowing settles into your bones, you walk differently. Not above life, but within it. More open, more soft, more still, not needing to win, not needing to prove, just being, fully, radiantly, effortlessly, because nothing is missing, nothing ever was. You only dreamed you were incomplete, but now the dream is shifting, and in its place a quiet truth remains. A truth too big for words, too intimate for thought, a truth that doesn't need belief, because it is, and in that truth you live, not as a someone, but as the one, playing, creating, loving, disappearing into the dance of form while never forgetting. You are the formless, you are the light, you are the space where all stories rise and fall, but none can define you. And now you are free. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped needing it to. You saw through the illusion, you let the mask fall, and you remembered what's always been true. You are not a separate self, you are not a thing, you are this being, this awareness, this moment, and that is everything. What if I told you, everything you see, every mountain, star, and cell in your body, is not out there in space, but projected from somewhere deeper? What if this reality isn't solid, not because it's empty, but because it's encoded? What if the entire universe is a hologram? It sounds impossible at first, but it's not just spiritual metaphor. It's one of the leading theories in modern physics, the holographic principle, originally proposed by Gerard Tooft and later refined by Leonard Susskind. It suggests that everything we experience in 3D space, matter, motion, even time, is actually stored on a distant, two-dimensional boundary, a cosmic horizon, a surface of pure information, like hologram, where the whole image is encoded in every tiny fragment. It's wild, isn't it, that the fabric of your life, the substance of your thoughts, the body you feel so anchored to, might actually be the shadow of something more fundamental. Something deeper than matter. Information. Not data the way we use it on computers, but pure vibrational code. Reality, as you know it, could be a projection from a deeper realm, not of atoms, but of frequency. The same way a holographic image emerges from laser-encoded information on a flat plate, and here's where it gets even more mysterious. In a hologram, every piece contains the whole, not a part of the whole. The whole. If you break a holographic plate in half and shine the proper light on each fragment, each one will still reveal the entire image. And that means something staggering. You are not a fragment of the universe, you are the universe. Entirely, fully, encoded in every cell. Every atom of your being holds the blueprint of the all. You're not just part of consciousness. You are consciousness, playing itself as a person, in a world, on a timeline, and everywhere you look, this truth reveals itself again and again. Fractals, those endlessly repeating patterns in nature, in galaxies, in broccoli, in your lungs and blood vessels. Every part mirrors the whole. Zoom in, zoom out. It's the same pattern, spiraling infinitely. Why? Because reality isn't built from the bottom up. It's recursive, self-reflective. Each level contains the structure of the next, as above, so below, as within, so without. This isn't just poetic, it's literal. Your thoughts spiral like galaxies, your neurons branch like trees. Your breath expands and contracts like the tides, like the stars, like the rhythm of the cosmos itself. Because you are not in the universe is in you. Not metaphorically, but dimensionally. Because the moment you let go of the illusion of matter as primary, you see it clearly. This is all consciousness, encoded, expressed, unfolding itself through vibration, form and fractal repetition. Not from a thing, but from a knowing, from pure, intelligent awareness, dreaming itself into complexity. You, me, this moment, all of it. Ripples in an infinite field. And you might ask, if this is all a projection, what's it projected from? The ancients had a word for it. Brahman, the Tao, the source, the infinite, the unmanifest field of pure potential. Not a being, but being itself. And everything you see, everything you touch, every emotion that rises is a surface ripple on that infinite stillness, just like a hologram, just like a fractal. Each part dancing as if it were separate while secretly remaining one. This is what mystics have been whispering for centuries, that the world is Maya, not illusion as in fake, but illusion as in projection, an appearance, a symbol, a code. And when you see through it, not with your eyes, but with your awareness, something inside you shifts. You stop treating the world as an object. You start listening to it as a message. A mirror. A song sung from within. Because if the universe is a hologram, then everything you experience is encoded with the whole. Every encounter, every challenge, every joy and every grief, they all contain the full pattern, the sacred fingerprint of the all. And so do you. You are not small. You are not limited. You are not separate. You are the entire field of consciousness, playing a single expression of itself, and remembering itself through your eyes. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. So what does it mean to live inside a hologram, to realize that the physical world, the textures, the faces, the spaces, isn't what it appears to be? It means you stop trying to find truth in appearances, because you understand now. Form is just the surface. The deeper truth lies in the pattern behind the form. And that pattern, it's you. It's everything. It's the same sacred intelligence repeating itself across scales and skins, wearing different names but telling the same eternal story. And once you see this, the separation between inner and outer begins to dissolve. You stop saying that happened to me, and you begin to wonder, what if that was a reflection of me? What if that conflict, that joy, that synchronicity was the hologram bending to reflect something deeper I needed to see, not as punishment, not as reward, but as pure information, a mirror encoded in the event? Because that's how the holographic field works. It doesn't just contain the whole, it expresses it. It shows you the part of the universal pattern you most need to remember right now. That's why when you shift your perception, your world shifts too, because it has to. It's not reacting to you. It is you. And as your inner frequency changes, the holographic projection realigns to match it. You think differently, you see differently, you feel more love, you experience more connection, you open to healing. You start to notice symbols and messages guiding you through it. This isn't magic, it's structure. It's how a holographic reality operates. The outer reflects the inner, not as metaphor but as mechanism. So the more attuned you become to this dance, the more sacred your life begins to feel, even the small things. The pattern on a leaf, the way light moves through a window, the timing of a phone call, a lyric, a sudden shift in energy. You no longer brush these off as coincidence. You feel them for what they are, encoded transmissions. And slowly the way you relate to life itself changes. You stop fighting the moment. You stop assuming that struggle equals failure. Because now you see, even your challenges carry the full code. They are not blocks, they are blueprints. They hold within them the entire lesson, the growth, the breakthrough, the liberation, just like the corner of a hologram still contains the full image. Nothing is wasted, not a tear, not a mistake, not a single second of your story. It's all embedded in the field. And when you start asking the right questions, not why me, but what's the pattern here, you shift from victim to visionary. You stop being a passenger in the dream. You become a conscious decoder of the design. And that's when reality starts to feel alive, like it's communicating. Because it is. Not in words, but in frequency, in fractals, in feelings that resonate deeper than language. It speaks to you through everything. The way a stranger smiles, the song that finds you in a moment of despair, the number that keeps repeating, the dream that returns with new details, each one a doorway, each one an invitation to remember the whole. You are not wandering through a random universe. You are co-weaving meaning with every step. You are reading the symbols of your own consciousness, projected out in space and time so you can see what you forgot. And this awareness becomes a compass. You begin to live with greater reverence. You make choices not just from logic, but from alignment, from the subtle pulse of intuition that whispers, this is the path. And even when the path doesn't make sense on the surface, you trust the pattern underneath. You trust that this fragment of the hologram knows the whole, that even when it feels dark or confusing, the design is intact, the intelligence is unbroken, and so are you. Always. Because you are not a fragment, you are the field, the whole appearing as a part, for the joy of remembering itself again and again. There's a reason black holes sit at the center of galaxies. They are not just cosmic anomalies, they are keys. Because everything you've been taught about matter begins to break down when you get close to one. Space stretches, time warps, the laws of physics begin to dissolve. And something astonishing happens. All the information that falls into a black hole, it's not lost. It's stored, encoded, on the surface, just like a hologram. The event horizon, the boundary around the black hole, behaves like a data vault. Every particle, every quantum fluctuation, every detail of whatever enters that darkness remains, as if the surface remembers. Everything the core devours. And here's where it gets mystical. Some physicists now believe this isn't just true for black holes. It might be true for the entire universe. That the three-dimensional world you experience is encoded, not inside space, but on the outer boundary of space. That the deepest truths of existence are not in what you see, but in the invisible structure that allows you to see it all. A structure that is sacred. A pattern that repeats. Sacred geometry, the flower of life, the golden ratio, the spiral of the Fibonacci sequence. These symbols are not ancient decorations. They are the blueprint of consciousness folding into form. They are the fingerprints of the hologram. From the growth of seashells to the movement of galaxies, these same patterns echo. They spiral through everything, not because nature is copying itself, but because consciousness, when it expresses into form, can only do so through certain harmonics, and those harmonics are geometry. They are the language of the universe, not English, not math, but pattern, vibration, shape. That's why spiritual traditions across cultures, Egyptians, Hindu, Mayan, Tibetan, all speak of mandalas, yantras, divine proportions, because they knew, they felt the structure beneath the veil, and they encoded it in art, in architecture, in sound, even the sacred chants. Amen, Amen. These aren't just words, they are vibrational signatures of the field. They activate resonance. They align you with the deeper symmetry of reality, not just as an idea, as a felt experience. You feel it when you stare into nature and something inside you goes still. You feel it when music moves you to tears and you don't know why. You feel it when you gaze at the stars and remember something you never learned. That memory? It's not from this life, it's from the all. Because the field is not just information, it's awareness. It's not a cold machine, it's alive. And so are you. Because you're not separate from the field, you are the field, experiencing itself from a single point of view. That's what a soul is, not a spirit trapped in a body, but a beam of awareness, refracted through the hologram, gathering experience, gathering wisdom, remembering itself lifetime after lifetime. And every life is another angle of the prism, another thread in the cosmic weave. You've played roles you've forgotten, you've walked paths that whisper to you in dreams, you've seen faces that feel familiar because they're a part of your pattern, your circle, your resonance. The soul's journey isn't linear, it's holographic. Each moment contains every lesson. Each incarnation echoes across timelines, and all of it, every tear, every joy, every silence, is encoded, not as punishment, not as karma in the way people fear it, but as intelligence, as integration, as remembrance. So you don't need to chase enlightenment. You don't need to transcend your humanness. You need only to see clearly that this life, this body, this moment is a microcosm of the entire design. And when you honor it, the whole responds. Because you're not walking through the hologram, you are the hologram, waking up from within. So once you've seen that reality isn't made of things but of thought, like patterns, sacred geometries, encoded light, what do you do with that knowing? You live differently. You listen differently. You begin to treat life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a woven field of messages. Because it is. Everything that shows up on your path, every conversation, every struggle, every random symbol, is part of the projection. It's not happening to you, it's happening through you. And if you want to understand what it's saying, you don't need more data. You need more stillness. Because the hologram doesn't reveal itself through noise, it reveals itself through resonance. That feeling in your chest when something clicks. That shiver down your spine when you hear something true. That deep exhale that says, yes, this is mine. You don't need to analyze it. You don't need to explain it to anyone. You only need to follow it. Because the map is already inside you, not in your logical mind, but in your energetic body, in your subtle awareness, in the part of you that knows before thought. When you trust that knowing, something incredible happens. You start moving in harmony with the pattern. You stop forcing. You start flowing. Not passively, but with precision, because you're listening not to the outer projection, but to the signal beneath it. The signal that says, turn here, let go, speak now, wait. It doesn't always make sense, but it's always right. Because it's not coming from the ego, it's coming from the whole. And the more you follow it, the more miracles begin to feel normal, not because reality is changing, but because your relationship to it is. You see the synchronicities. You understand the timing. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me, but what's unfolding through me? And that shift changes everything. You become a participant in the pattern. Not a pawn, not a victim, a co-creator, because now you understand. You don't manifest by manipulating the projection, you manifest by tuning your frequency. When your internal resonance aligns with what you seek, the hologram reflects it naturally. Like a song echoing in perfect harmony. So if you want peace, become peace. If you want connection, live from your open heart. If you want freedom, let go of the false. It's not about control. It's about coherence. And coherence is created through awareness, through presence, through tuning in to the deepest layer of the moment and responding from that still, sacred place. The place that remembers. Every piece contains the whole. So you don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to align here, in this conversation, in this breath, in this choice. Because from the perspective of the hologram, every piece is the doorway. There's no later version of you that will finally understand. There's only now. The fractal of eternity where all wisdom waits. And when you meet life from that place, something ancient opens in you. Not a technique, not a system, but a deep cellular memory, a remembrance that says, I am not lost, I am not broken, I am the pattern remembering itself, I am the code becoming conscious, I am the whole in a single human form. And from here, you begin to walk as a living key, a mirror of the divine pattern, a portal to the field, not through effort, but through being, fully, softly, sacredly. So how do you live inside a hologram? How do you walk through the world knowing that everything, every face, every flicker of shadow or light is a reflection of your own consciousness? You learn to read it not with the eyes of logic, but with the eyes of presence. The kind of presence that sees with the whole body, that listens not just to what's said, but to what hums beneath it. Because life is not a test, it's a transmission, and the more attuned you become, the more you realize there are no neutral moments. Everything speaks. The missed train, the number that keeps appearing, the stranger who reminds you of a dream you once had, the breakdown that led to your breakthrough. All of it is encoded. And once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. You become a decoder of the divine, a walker between dimensions. Not because you seek power or answers, but because you've remembered that you're already inside the pattern, and the pattern is inside you. So you no longer rush through your life waiting for signs. You slow down enough to hear what's already being said, because it's always speaking, in symbols, in sensations, in silence. And your job is not to force meaning, but to feel what resonates. To notice the chill that runs down your spine when truth touches your bones. To trust the emotion that surfaces when you hear something ancient and holy. To move when the field says move. And to rest when it asks you to listen. This is how you begin to live with a hologram. Not against it. Not to sleep inside it. But as an awake thread inside a cosmic web. You become conscious within the dream, not detached from it, but fully present in its dance. You know you're not separate from what unfolds, so you stop fighting it, you stop blaming it, you start dancing with it, and in that dance something sacred opens, a felt sense of trust, not blind faith, but deep coherence, because you've felt the truth in your cells. You've watched the pattern appear and reappear and fold itself back into meaning again and again. You know you're being held, not by a distant deity, but by the intelligence you are. You are the field, waking up to itself, the projection, realizing it's also the light, the observer and the observed collapsing into one. And from that knowing, peace arises, not because life gets easier, but because your resistance softens. You no longer need to escape the dream. You simply see it for what it is. A sacred unfolding, a mirror, a living mandala. Each moment a brushstroke on the canvas of the whole. And you are both the canvas and the artist. Both the question and the answer. You are not on the outside trying to understand the system. You are the system. You are the design. You are the divine expressing itself in one exquisite form. And the more you remember this, the more the field responds. It brings you guidance not through grand events, but through presence. It whispers, it nudges, it reflects. And when you follow it, not out of fear, but from wholeness, you unlock timelines you couldn't imagine from the old lens of separation, timelines of clarity, of joy, of ease without effort. Because now you're aligned with the all, not by force, but by remembrance. And from here, life is not something you survive, it's something you translate. You wake up every day knowing the dream is alive with meaning. You speak to the sky and it answers. You walk through the world and it bends to reflect your frequency. Because this is not a universe of accidents, it's a universe of echoes. And everything is echoing back the truth you're finally willing to live. That you are not a piece, you are the pattern. You are not a shadow, you are the source of light. You are not waiting for signs, you are the sign. And now you remember. From the moment you arrived in this world, you were being programmed, not maliciously, not necessarily with bad intentions, but still. Layer by layer, belief by belief, you were wrapped in a web of ideas that were never truly yours. You learned how to see not through your own eyes, but through inherited filters, through language, through systems, through symbols embedded in your nervous system before you could speak. And the deepest part? You didn't know it was happening, because that's how effective the programming is. It hides in what you call normal. It disguises itself as truth. You learned to obey before you understood the concept of freedom. You learned to fear before you had a reason. And those early imprints, the tone of a voice, the reward or punishment, the praise or rejection, they formed grooves in your subconscious, grooves you've been walking ever since. This is childhood conditioning, and it goes deeper than memory. It becomes identity. If you were told you're too loud, too sensitive, not good enough, you didn't question it, you absorbed it. And your nervous system began to organize itself around that belief, building behaviors to compensate, constructing walls to protect you from rejection, creating patterns of thought that now run on autopilot, long after the original moment has passed. That's how the subconscious works. It records, it replays, and it doesn't ask if the tape is true. It just hits play again and again until it becomes a loop you call me. And then you grow up, but the program doesn't. It keeps running, and it's reinforced by the world around you. A world designed to keep you small, distracted, divided, unquestioning, because your attention is currency, and the Matrix knows it. Not the sci-fi version, the real Matrix, the web of media, schooling, politics, entertainment, and ideology that shapes how you see yourself. Without ever asking your permission, it tells you who you are, what's possible, what's normal, what to fear, what to want. It feeds you dreams wrapped in limitation, and it punishes you, subtly, when you begin to wake up. Because if you stop agreeing with the illusion loses power. And that's dangerous, not just to systems but to the parts of you still attached to them. Because let's be honest, you've internalized the Matrix. You carry it in your language, in your self-talk, in the way you question your worth before you question the system. This isn't your fault, it's how the loop sustains itself. By keeping you focused on the symptom instead of the source. By telling you the problem is you, your body, your mindset, your productivity, your brand. But the truth, the real issue is the program, the assumptions you were given before you could choose, the stories you absorbed before you even knew what a story was. And if you want to be free, you have to see the program. You have to unmask the story, especially the one that says, "This is just how it is." Because that phrase, it's the anthem of the unconscious. It's the lullaby that keeps you asleep. But now, you're stirring. You're noticing the cracks in the code. You're hearing the quiet voice behind the noise that says, "None of this is what it seems." And that voice? That's you, the real you. Not the programmed self, not the role you've been rehearsing, but the awareness that never bought into it. The you that remembers truth beyond language, beyond labels, beyond control. That you can't be programmed. You can only be buried. And now, you're beginning to unearth yourself. Not through rebellion, but through recognition. Not by fighting the system, but by no longer feeding it your attention, because attention is energy, and when you take it back, you reclaim your power, not as a reaction, but as a remembering. Language is powerful, more powerful than you've been led to believe. It's not just how we communicate, it's how we construct reality. It defines the boundaries of what you can see, feel, name, and express. And when your language is limited, your world becomes small, without you even knowing it. Think about it. You were taught words before you were taught silence, labels before direct experience, and every word you learned came with a hidden agreement. This is a chair. This is success. This is love. This is who you are. But who decided? Who defined those words? Who gave them the emotional tone, the social weight, the rules? You didn't. They were inherited. You took them in just like air. And eventually they shaped the way you thought about everything, especially yourself. Because when your inner dialogue is built from external definitions, you end up living someone else's version of reality. That's the trap. Language becomes a lens, and lenses filter light, so you stop seeing what is, you only see what you've been told to see. This is how belief systems become invisible cages. You're not chained, you're conditioned. Trained to stay within certain mental borders, because outside those borders the language doesn't work, and without language, the mind panics. It loses control. That's why awakening is often terrifying at first. You begin to step outside the map, and suddenly the stories don't apply, the labels don't hold, the categories collapse, and what's left is raw experience, wordless knowing, being. And if you're still clinging to the matrix of language, that kind of presence can feel like death. But it's not death. It's truth. It's who you were before the words, before the programming, before the opinions and roles and inherited names. You were alive. You were aware. You were whole. You just didn't have a name for it yet. And now? Now you're beginning to remember it. But remembering isn't enough. You have to reclaim your mind. You have to look at every thought and ask, where did this come from? Is this my truth, or just a repetition of someone else's? Does this belief expand me or trap me? Does this label reveal something real, or does it shrink my aliveness into a box? And then you start replacing old scripts with direct seeing, not as an intellectual game, but as a spiritual practice. Because when you change your language, you change your lens. You stop saying, I am anxious, and you begin to say, anxiety is moving through. You stop saying, I am a failure, and you begin to ask, whose standard am I measuring against? You stop assuming every thought is true, and you start watching thoughts like clouds, temporary, insistent, but not ultimate. They pass. You remain. That's how reprogramming begins. Not by forcing new beliefs, but by disbelieving the old ones, by meeting them with awareness so clear, so loving that they lose their power, because belief systems are parasites. They need your unconscious agreement to survive. They feed on your fear of being wrong, your desire to fit in, your hope for certainty. But when you let go of needing certainty, when you let go of needing a label to feel real, you begin to taste something wild and uncontainable. Freedom, not the freedom to do anything, the freedom to be anything, to feel, to evolve, to live outside the script. And that's where your power returns, not because you built a better mask, but because you dropped it. You dropped the idea that you have to become something worthy of love, and you remembered you are love. You were born worthy. Everything else was programming, and now the code is breaking. Your attention is the most valuable resource you have. Not your time, not your money, your attention. Because wherever your attention goes, your energy flows, and whatever receives your energy begins to grow. This is why the modern world fights so hard to capture your focus. It's not accidental, it's engineered. The scroll that never ends, the notification that pings, the headline designed to trigger just enough fear or outrage to make you click. Every piece of content, every flashing banner, every buzz of dopamine, it's not just entertainment, it's extraction. You are being mined. Your awareness is being broken into fragments, harvested and sold to the highest bidder. But the real cost isn't just your data, it's your divinity. Because when your awareness is scattered, when your mind is hooked into 1,000 micro-distractions, you forget who you are. You forget what it feels like to be here, to breathe without reaching for a screen, to walk without checking a feed, to feel your own presence without needing a performance. This is the spiritual war, not in fire and blood, but in pixels and pace, in noise and speed, in the subtle suggestion that if you're not consuming, producing, or reacting, you're not enough. And so you stay plugged in, not because you want to, but because your nervous system has been trained to chase novelty like it's oxygen. It's not your fault, it's the result of billions of dollars and decades of research. Weaponized psychology, designed to keep you from one thing: stillness. Because stillness is where the code breaks. It's where you stop reacting and start remembering. It's where you reclaim your attention from the circus and offer it back to your own soul. And in a world that profits from your distraction, presence becomes rebellion. Choosing silence becomes sacred. Because in silence, the matrix can't feed. It can't sell you an identity. It can't hijack your nervous system with synthetic urgency. It has no hooks there. And that's why it avoids silence at all costs. It fills every gap with noise. Even your inner dialogue isn't safe. It's been colonized by invisible scripts telling you how to be, who to impress, what to fear. But here's the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your reactions. You are not the persona you project. You're the one who sees all of it. And the more you rest in that seeing, the more you notice what's been stealing your life force. Not just the obvious things, like doom scrolling or compulsive comparison, but the subtle pulls. The need to always be on, the addiction to validation, the impulse to explain yourself just to feel real. These are the programs, and your attention is the battery. So pull the plug, not out of anger, but out of sovereignty. Reclaim your attention. Not by resisting the world, but by returning to the one place the world can't follow: your awareness, your breath, your sacred now. Because here's what they don't want you to realize. Once you anchor your attention back into presence, you become unprogrammable. You see through the tricks. You no longer respond like a puppet to every trigger. You pause, you witness, you choose. And in that choice, you reclaim yourself, fully, fiercely, softly, as the one who remembers that no system, no screen, no algorithm can ever define you. Because you were never a product, you were never the user. You were the light behind the lens all along. You think you're making choices. You feel like you're in control. But ask yourself, where do your desires come from? Where do your fears originate? Where does your sense of right and wrong, good and bad, actually begin? Was it born from your own direct knowing, or was it handed to you, whispered by a parent, rewarded by a teacher, repeated in 1,000 television shows, echoed by culture until it became a subconscious law inside your mind? This is the truth most never want to face. Much of what you call free will is just patterned response, pre-programmed loops dressed up as decisions. You're not choosing from clarity, you're reacting from conditioning. And because everyone around you is doing the same, it feels normal. But that doesn't make it true. The idea that you are a completely free, rational, autonomous individual, it's a myth. A myth sold to you by systems that thrive on your unconscious compliance. You think you want the new phone, the status, the praise. But is that you wanting it? Or is it the echo of a deeper code? You think you fear failure, But is it failure you fear, or the judgment that's been linked to it since you were 5 years old? This is how the illusion is sustained, by hiding the strings, by feeding you choices that all lead back to the same cage. Work harder, buy more, prove your worth. Stay safe, stay small, and because the walls are invisible you call it freedom, but real freedom? It begins the moment you question the script, the moment you pause before the reaction, the moment you stop asking, what should I do, and start asking, who's asking. That's the crack in the loop. That's the breath that breaks the trance. Because suddenly you're no longer a character inside the story, you're the awareness watching the whole play unfold, and from that vantage point, everything changes. You see the program not as evil but as inherited, not as personal but as collective, passed down like a virus from generation to generation, growing more sophisticated with each iteration. But now the virus has met something stronger. Consciousness, presence, you, the real you, the one who doesn't need the script to feel safe, the one who doesn't need the system to feel real, the one who can choose not from programming but from presence. And that kind of choice is rare. It's quiet, it doesn't announce itself with ego, it just moves, effortlessly, clearly, aligned. It's the kind of choice that doesn't come from the mind at all. It comes from awareness, it arises from stillness. And when it does, you'll feel it. It won't be based on fear, it won't be wrapped in shoulds. It will feel like truth before the thought forms. It will feel like yes in your bones. That's real will, that's divine will, not imposed from above, not manufactured by mind, but flowing through you like music through an instrument, not because you're trying to be free, but because you finally remembered you always were, you just forgot. Because the noise was loud, because the program was deep, because you were taught to trust everything but your own knowing. But now you see. And that's where the path begins, not with rebellion, not with control, but with awareness. The simple, sacred act of seeing clearly. And in that seeing, the illusion starts to dissolve. So now you see it. The program. The code running silently beneath your every thought, your every reaction. It shaped your fears. It sculpted your ambitions. It whispered what was possible and what was not. And for so long, you believed it. Not because you were weak, but because you were human. Because all of us, at some point, mistake the script for the self. We forget we're the awareness behind the mask, not the mask itself. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And in that moment, you reclaim something sacred. Choice. Not the illusion of choice between pre-approved options, but the deeper kind. The kind that says, I no longer outsource my meaning to the machine. I no longer trade my intuition for acceptance. I no longer confuse comfort with truth. Because now you remember, your soul didn't come here to conform. It came here to awaken, to deconstruct the illusion from the inside out, to walk through the hologram with eyes wide open, not avoiding life, but fully meeting it, with clarity, with reverence, even when the world screams louder, even when the noise tempts you back into the trance. You choose stillness, not silence, but inner stillness, the kind that can hold contradiction without collapsing, the kind that feels everything and clings to nothing. Because now you know, the matrix doesn't fall when you fight it. It dissolves when you stop feeding it your energy. And your energy? It's sacred. It's sovereign. It belongs to you. Not to ads, not to algorithms, not to identities you were conditioned to perform. It belongs to the real you, the witness, the awareness, the presence that was there before the name and will remain long after the story ends. And that presence? It needs no validation. It doesn't crave approval. It doesn't chase the next thing, because it's already whole, already full, already free. That's what they don't want you to know, because a sovereign soul can't be sold. A conscious mind can't be manipulated. And a being who lives from presence can't be controlled. So now you return to yourself, not the self that was shaped by the world, but the one that watches the world arise and fall like waves, the one who sees, the one who remembers, the one who, even in the darkest moment, knows, this is not all that I am, and from that knowing, you begin to live, not as a product, not as a persona, but as presence, free, awake, unshakable, because you've seen through the illusion, and now the real journey begins. Have you ever had a lucid dream? That moment when inside the dream something shifts. You look around and suddenly realize, wait, this isn't real. I'm dreaming. Your heart races. The air feels electric. You become aware that you're not just in the dream, you're aware inside it. And with that awareness, the rules change. You're no longer just a character being swept along by the story. You are the dreamer. And in that moment, everything softens. Fear vanishes. Gravity becomes optional. You realize you can fly. You can shake mountains, summon people, walk through walls, not by force, but through focus, because the dream responds not to effort, but to awareness. Now, what if waking life is no different? What if this too is a dream? Not a fake hallucination, but a real, vivid projection inside consciousness. And what if the key to everything you've been searching for isn't out there in the dream's details, but in the shift where you remember you're dreaming? Because here's the truth. You're not here to escape the dream. You're here to wake up within it, not to deny your emotions or transcend your humanity, but to live as the lucid dreamer, aware, present, unshaken. Because when you bring awareness into the dream, everything changes, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it does. Fear dissolves, not because danger disappears, but because you realize who you are. You are not the body in the scene, you are the awareness the scene arises within. You are the witness, the field, the silent presence behind the eyes that sees without clinging, and when you remember that, you don't have to run from pain. You don't have to chase pleasure. You don't have to control every outcome. Because you realize the dream has always been shifting in response to you. Your frequency, your focus, your state of being. That's the secret they don't teach you. Reality is not fixed. It bends, it mirrors, it reflects your dominant vibration, just like a lucid dream. And when you become conscious inside that reflection, you no longer act from fear, you move from clarity, from stillness, from trust. You stop being a prisoner of circumstance, and you become a sculptor of space, not in the sense of manifestation as wishful thinking, but in the deepest truth. That presence reshapes perception, and perception is creation. So the more awake you are inside this dream, the more gracefully it responds, not instantly, not always how your ego wants, but with stunning precision, with echoes, with synchronicities, with symbolic language the soul remembers even when the mind forgets. That's what awakening is, not escaping the illusion, but recognizing it for what it is, and still choosing to walk it with love, because when you stop trying to make the dream real, you start living it freely, fearlessly, joyfully, and even pain becomes sacred, because now you see it's part of the dance and the code that helps you wake up more fully. You begin to welcome what arises, not because you like it, but because you know it's showing you something you've outgrown, something you've forgotten, something you're finally ready to transmute. That's living lucidly. It's not about control, it's about clarity. It's about staying soft even when the dream turns dark. Because you know deep down, it's all passing, it's all appearance, and behind it all, you remain unchanged, untouched, free. Living lucidly isn't about doing something extraordinary, it's about being differently. It's about showing up with the awareness that everything you see, every encounter, every emotion, every thought, is part of a dynamic projection that responds to you, And the more conscious you become, the more elegant the dream becomes. Not perfect, but meaningful. Even the difficult moments start to shimmer with insight, because you realize they're not here to hurt you. They're here to reveal you, to show you where you're still asleep, where you're still reacting from old wounds, where you're still trying to control the dream instead of dancing with it. And when you see that, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" That shift from victim to witness is everything, because the witness doesn't suppress the pain. The witness includes it. It says, fear is here, not "I am afraid." It notices anger, but doesn't become it. It observes grief, but knows grief is not the whole truth, because the witness is bigger than any emotion, bigger than any story. It's not bound by time. It's not limited by identity. It just sees, clearly, lovingly, without attachment. And that's your true nature. That's what you return to when the ego softens, when the noise fades, when the veil lifts. You don't disappear, you wake up. And you realize you don't have to run anymore. You don't have to fix everything to feel peace. You don't have to make the dream behave a certain way. You just have to remember what you are. Consciousness, pure luminous presence, the space in which all dreams arise and dissolve. And from that place you move differently. You speak more slowly. You listen more deeply. You no longer chase experiences to complete you, because you already feel whole. And from that wholeness, life begins to mirror something new. Not struggle, not striving, but synchronicity, flow, beauty you don't have to earn. Because the dream no longer needs to shake you awake. You're already awake, and now you walk as a dreamer who knows he's dreaming, not lost in fantasy but grounded in awareness, rooted in truth, able to hold the world lightly, even while loving it fully. That's the paradox. You stop clinging and you start caring even more. Not because you need the dream to go a certain way, but because you finally see it as sacred. Every moment, every face, every shadow, all of it is infused with meaning because you are the one who sees the meaning now. You're no longer waiting for life to hand it to you. You are the meaning maker, the dream sculptor, the soul who walks through illusion with eyes wide open and says, "I remember who I am." And from that remembrance, fear begins to lose its grip. Not because you resist it, but because you see through it. You see it as part of the costume, part of the dream, and you let it move through without letting it lead. That's true power. The power to remain present when the old script tells you to run. The power to breathe instead of react, to soften instead of control, to witness instead of collapse. In that presence, it ripples, it shifts timelines, it heals stories. It repatams the dream not because you force it, but because the dream has no choice but to reflect the clarity you now embody. That's how awakening works. It doesn't pull you out of the world, it drops you into it, fully, consciously, gently. Because when you live as the witness, you're never at the mercy of the dream again. You're in the world, but not of it. You walk with grace, you speak with intention, you live like you know you're dreaming, and you choose to dream with love. Spiritual awakening isn't about floating above the world. It's not about transcending every emotion or dissolving into pure light. That's just another dream, another fantasy the ego clings to, hoping to avoid the raw human truth of being here. But true awakening? It doesn't pull you away from experience, it plunges you deeper into it, deeper into presence, deeper into love, deeper into the felt sense of this moment exactly as it is. You stop running from the illusion, not because you've solved it, but because you've finally recognized it. And when you see the illusion for what it is, you don't have to fight it anymore. You can hold it gently, live inside it consciously, move through it with compassion, not because it's real, but because you are. That's the difference. You become real. You become present, and that presence Your pure awareness begins to illuminate everything, not with judgment, not with analysis, but with understanding. You see how fear arises when you forget the dream, how pain deepens when you resist what is, how suffering amplifies when you cling to identity, to control, to permanence in a world that's always shifting, and you stop trying to make the illusion solid. You let it be liquid. You let it flow. Because now you remember, the pain isn't the problem. The problem is your resistance to it. The fear isn't the prison. The prison is believing it defines you. You've never been trapped by what arises. You've only been trapped by what you believe about it, and belief is the glue of the dream. Once you loosen your grip on belief, especially the ones about who you think you are, freedom starts to unfold from within, not as a state to reach, but as your natural condition. You were never meant to carry all this weight, all these masks, all these old codes and inherited roles. You were meant to witness them, to feel them pass through, to let them dissolve when they're done teaching you. That's what happens when you awaken. Not that everything becomes easy, but that you stop believing ease is the goal. You start showing up for life not to fix it, but to feel it, to be fully here for the mystery. The laughter, the ache, the boredom, the breath. You realize, even this is sacred. Even this moment, quiet, imperfect, uncertain, is a thread in the infinite tapestry of being. And you're not outside of that tapestry. You are it. You're the color and the canvas, the thread and the weaver. And once you realize that, something softens, the tension in your jaw, the knot in your chest, the idea that you have to figure it all out. You don't. You just have to be here for it. To witness the dream without turning away, to meet it with the heart of someone who remembers what they are, not the dream, not the name, not the story, but the seeing itself. And when you live from that place, not just in meditation, but in traffic, in conversations, in silence, you begin to walk as truth in a world of mirrors, not superior, not separate, just awake, gently, lovingly, clearly. Fear begins to fade the moment you remember what you are. Not the body, not the thoughts, not even the story unfolding, but the awareness holding it all. Because fear can only survive when you believe you're something that can be broken, something that can be lost, rejected, abandoned, destroyed. But you're not that. You never were. You are the space all of that moves through. You are the one who watches the fear rise, peak and fall, like waves on the surface of a vast ocean that never disappears. And once you see that clearly, you stop gripping. You stop tightening every time discomfort knocks at the door. You stop trying to outthink uncertainty. Instead, you breathe, you allow, you feel the contraction, and you watch it dissolve. Not because you forced it away, but because you stopped feeding it your belief. That's the key. Fear feeds on belief. It survives on identification. It whispers, this feeling means something's wrong. This sensation is dangerous. This situation will break you. And when you believe it, you shrink, you spiral, you brace. But when you meet fear from the witness, from the calm clarity of presence, it loses its mask. You see it for what it is. An energy, a messenger, a pattern moving through. And that's when you realize fear was never the enemy. It was a doorway, a threshold you were meant to walk through, not with force, but with awareness. Because on the other side of fear is not just relief. It's freedom. Freedom from the illusion that you have to control life to feel safe. Freedom from the story that you're not whole until something changes. Freedom from the unconscious loops that keep you locked in patterns you never chose. And how do you step through that doorway? Not by fixing the dream, not by erasing the fear, but by remembering you are not what's happening, you are what's aware of what's happening. You are not inside the dream is inside you. That remembrance doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you infinitely more compassionate. because now you can hold pain without drowning in it. You can feel intensity without needing to label it good or bad. You can watch change unfold without clutching for control, because you know that who you are, what you are, was never at risk. You're not here to become untouchable. You're here to become undisturbed. Not numb, but rooted, present, capable of meeting anything because you know that nothing can define you. Not success, not failure, not praise, not loss. They're all weather passing through. And you're the sky. That's not a metaphor. That's your true nature. And when you live from that knowing, everything becomes lighter. Not because life stops challenging you, but because you stop confusing the challenge for your identity. You stop reacting from the dream. You respond from awareness. And in that response, something ancient and peaceful rises. Not indifference, not escape, but grace. A grounded, sacred way of walking through the illusion. Awake, open, unafraid. To live as a witness is to walk through the dream without becoming it. Not to reject what you see, but to see clearly that it's not what you are. The roles, the emotions, the experiences, they still happen. But they don't trap you anymore, because now you know they're not yours. They're passing forms, movements within awareness. And you're not inside the experience is inside you. You no longer need to resist what arises, you simply allow it to be what it is. And in that allowing, something extraordinary happens. You stop suffering, not because pain disappears, but because your resistance to it does. You stop grasping for pleasure, not because you no longer enjoy it, but because you know it's not your source. You stop running from discomfort, not because you enjoy it, but because you know it doesn't define you. You start living from stillness, from center, from the quiet awareness that's been here the whole time, patiently waiting for you to return. And when you return, the world doesn't become perfect. It becomes luminous. The ordinary becomes holy. The silence becomes music. The now becomes everything. Because presence isn't just peaceful. It's alive. It's rich. It holds the entire spectrum. Joy and grief, beauty and loss, creation and death, and it resists none of it. This is the art of waking up in the dream. Not rising above it, but descending so fully into presence that the dream becomes clear and weightless. You see through the veil. You feel the pulse of the sacred in everything. And most importantly, you stop trying to control what was never yours to manage. You let life breathe through you, speak through you, move through you, and you trust it, not because you figured everything out, but because you remembered you never had to. You're not here to master the illusion. You're here to witness it, to love through it, to wake up within it moment by moment, breath by breath. And in doing so, you become free. Not because the dream ends, but because you no longer believe it's all that you are. And now, finally, you can rest. Not as a prisoner of thought, not as a puppet of programming, but as the presence behind it all. The lucid dreamer, the sacred witness, the one who walks awake. So now, here you are, after all the unraveling, after all the questions that led to more questions, after peeling back the veil of perception, simulation, paradox, and identity. What's left? Stillness. Not the stillness of answers, but the stillness of being. It doesn't shout. It doesn't explain. It simply is. And you, in this moment, are not required to do anything. Not required to conclude. Not required to arrive at some final revelation. Because maybe the most sacred knowing is not knowing in the way the mind craves, wrapped in certainty, boxed in clarity, sealed with answers, but knowing as a living mystery, a presence that doesn't close anything, but opens everything. Maybe you were never meant to solve reality like a puzzle. Maybe you were meant to dance with it, to taste its chaos, to breathe in its paradoxes without trying to resolve them. Because truth isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. It's the breath before the thought, the space before the word, the glance between strangers that says, I know you beyond names. And so, maybe now, you can soften. You can stop gripping so tightly to the need to understand. You can lay down the armor of intellect and rest in the warm, wild mystery of existence. Because that mystery is not something to be feared, it's something to be trusted. It's where love comes from, it's where you came from. It's where every thought, every color, every quantum ripple and cosmic tide emerged from and returns to. And the more you let it be mystery, the more alive it becomes. It meets you in dreams, in silence, in synchronicities too precise to be coincidence. It whispers to you not in words, but in timing, in sensation, in the knowing behind your ribs that says you're exactly where you need to be, even now. Even if you don't know why, even if it hurts, even if it makes no sense. That's the divine intelligence we so often miss because we're too busy trying to control it. But what if you let go? Not in surrender as defeat, but in surrender as return. Return to what's always been holding you, this breath, this moment, this vast presence within which all of it, thoughts, identities, fears, arises and dissolves. And in that return something else falls away. The need to be somebody. The need to be right. The need to be seen in a certain light. You begin to say goodbye, not with resistance, but with reverence. Goodbye to the mask. Goodbye to the urgency to prove. Goodbye to the illusion of me as something fragile that needs constant protection. And in that soft goodbye, you begin to hear the music again, the quiet song beneath the noise, the rhythm that's always been here, waiting for you to slow down enough to listen. And when you listen, really listen, you don't hear answers, you hear your soul. You hear the echo of something ancient and untouched whispering, you don't have to become anything. You already are. You don't have to earn your place in this universe. You already belong, not because of what you've done, not because of what you've healed, but because of what you are. Presence, awareness, life, in its purest expression. And when you let yourself settle into that, when you stop trying to fix yourself, define yourself, transcend yourself, you begin to feel something deeper than clarity. You begin to feel peace. Not the kind that comes and goes, not the kind that depends on everything going right, but the peace that remains, the peace that is. Because beneath the layers, beneath the illusions and stories and simulations, that's what you are. Not a seeker, not a struggler, not even a student of truth, but the space in which truth dances, the silence behind the sound, the dreamer who forgot, and then remembered, and maybe the remembering is enough. Maybe you don't need to carry so much anymore. Maybe you can forgive the parts of yourself that fell asleep, the chapters that felt lost, the moments when you forgot your light. It was all part of the unfolding. The forgetting was never failure. It was part of the pattern, the same way night falls before dawn. Confusion arrives before clarity. Ego rises before release, and you needed every step to find your way back here, back to this moment, this stillness, this breath. So now, take one more, not to reach anything, but to return, to feel yourself here, alive, awake. Enough, and let this be your quiet revolution, to stop chasing the answers and start living the questions. To walk not with certainty, but with wonder. To release the map and trust the compass inside your chest. Because reality isn't broken, it's unfinished. And you are the painter. Not the one who colors within the lines, but the one who creates new worlds with each breath, each choice, each moment of presence. You don't need to fix the dream. You just need to remember that you're dreaming. And from that remembrance, live, not as someone trying to get somewhere, but as the living expression of consciousness itself. Curious, open, free. This is not the end. This is the return. To what was always here. To what never needed to be found. To you.